Howdy folks, welcome to version 1 of the CompTIA Security Plus practice questions. As you can probably see on the screen, these practice questions were made with the SY0-701 exam in mind, and if you're wondering if these would work for a newer version of the exam too, yes they will. At the end of the day, it will still measure you on the same skills and it will still cover the same objectives. If anyone is wondering if these are the actual questions from the official exam, no they're not. These custom practice questions of mine do, however, test you on the same things though, so if you understand the actual topics and the things themselves, then you're ready to go and write. If you don't feel comfortable with the topics or questions though, then I'll suggest maybe studying some more, holding back on that exam until you actually feel comfortable with all the topics and objectives that needs to be covered for the exam. Alright, and then folks, if you are looking for more practical based questions, that you'll find on my Patreon, link is in the video description down below. Before we jump into that first question folks, if you have not done it already, please boink that like button, help a homie out, don't be a weenie. Also, if you'd like to know when I release more practice questions or any other content for that matter, maybe consider subscribing. Alrighty, enough of all the blah blah blah, let's get to that first practice question. Question 1. Someone you know at another company receives a text message from an unrecognized number claiming to be the Chief Executive Officer, in other words CEO, of their company and asks them to purchase gift cards. Which of the following types of attacks describes this example? Alright, so here we go guys. I've given you guys 4 different kinds of attacks. Looking at those 4, which one of those 4 would you say sounds like what we see there above? Somebody's claiming to be the CEO of this company and they're asking this person to go and buy gift cards. Does that sound like the kind of thing a CEO would ask you to go and do? No. So what exactly are these folks doing? Is it A, phishing? No guys, phishing is when you are fishing for something sensitive, something of value. This could be a username and a password, it could be a credit card number, it's generally something sensitive, it's generally something of value. Now phishing is more of an umbrella term if I'm being honest with you guys. It consists of many subcategories. You get vishing, you get quishing, and a whole boatload. So it all depends on how you're doing it. So normally if we just say phishing on its own, it's normally via email, if we're being vague about it. But it could be via phone that I'm trying to, get information out of you. And if it's via phone, we call that vishing. If it's via a QR code, it will be called quishing. If it's via a text message like an SMS, it is called smishing. Yes, I kid you not, smishing. Now at any point in time in this question, guys, do they say this perpetrator is trying to get sensitive information? No, it does not. So it's not phishing. If we look at answer B there, spear phishing. What the cheese is that? Spear phishing, guys, is still phishing, except when you see the word spear in front of it, it means you are specifically targeting a specific individual. So maybe I am specifically targeting the IT administrator, or I'm specifically targeting any other user in a company. Maybe her name is Adele, and I specifically want to target Miss Adele. Nobody else, I couldn't care less about anybody else, it's a specific target. Now, with most phishing attacks, folks, it's normally like a wide net they're going to cast. They're just going to go and send it out to a whole bunch of people, and whoever is, dumb enough to fall for it, great for them. But spear phishing is not a wide net that's being cast here. No, they are targeting someone specific. Other than that, it's still the same as a normal phishing attack. So it's not A, it's not B. Looking at answer C, impersonation. Yes, that is so far the answer. Why? Because if you look at the original question there, it says claiming to be the CEO. So that is impersonation, would you not say? So for now, that's the answer. Let's just double check answer D first before we claim that answer C here is the answer. I actually know what the answer is because I compiled these questions, but still. If we look at answer D there, guys, DOS, denial of service. That is when you've got something on your machine, normally malware in most cases, that's denying you an actual service. This can honestly be something as simple as your print spooler service. The print spooler service, for those of you that don't know, it's a service that runs on all machines and allows you to print should you be lucky enough to have a printer. Nothing here says that there's being some sort of service that's being denied. Absolutely not. The question does state, though, that someone is pretending to be someone. So, it's impersonation. The answer here, folks, is impersonation. Question 2. You have been hired as a penetration tester. That means you go and test people's security, either in your own company or other companies. You begin your engagement by performing port and service scans against the client environment according to the rules of engagement. Which of the following reconnaissance types are you performing? Now, if you look at the 4 reconnaissance types that I've got there, guys, all 4 of them are legitimate things you do find in the reconnaissance. I'll be honest with you guys, none of those are fake. All 4 of those are real. But there is a bit of a, I wouldn't say a trick answer there, but I want to see if you guys actually pay attention. Now, if we look at answer A, guys, active. Active is when I'm going to go and test your security, but I'm going to go and do it directly. If you look at answer B, passive, that is to go and indirectly test your company's security or another company's security. So you're not really going to go and disturb anybody. For the most part, they might not even know that you're doing it. It's not going to disturb anyone or anything. It's kind of silently happening in the background. You're just looking for documents, things like that. Nobody or nothing's going to be disturbed if you go and do a passive penetration test. Active is when you go and directly test a company's security. And there is a chance you may or may not disturb some people or services and stuff while doing this. Now, folks, if you look at the original question there, it says you are performing this against the ports and services and stuff. That, I'll be honest with you guys, is direct. The answer here is, in fact, A. I know I have not covered answers C and D yet, but the answer here is, in fact, A, guys, because I am directly testing security. But, just to cover the other possible answers here as well, defensive, guys, is when you are going to go and proactively check your own security. Just going to go and make sure your settings are correct. Make sure you've closed this, closed that, make sure you've done the correct settings and configurations and all that. That is you being proactive in your company. That is defensive. You're being proactive about it. You're not waiting until you get hacked. You're not necessarily going to go and hire penetration tester to go and test your security. You are just proactively going to go and close stuff and, make your environment harder, as the word they call it. If we look at the term offensive, answer D there, guys. Offensive, you've got 2 kinds of offensive. You've got active and you've got passive. So that's what I meant earlier in the beginning of this question when I said I'm going to try and trick you guys and see if you guys actually pay attention. So folks, if you go look up offensive, specifically when it comes to reconnaissance types, specifically in cybersecurity, you will find that offensive consists of active and it consists of passive. Active, of course, being when I'm directly testing your security, like checking your ports and services and things like that. Anything that I'm doing directly, which may or may not disturb your business. Passive is, less aggressive. I'm not going to go directly do it, and I'm not necessarily going to disturb your business. Both of those fall under this mini umbrella, if you will, though, or which is called offensive. Anyway, folks, the answer here is still A. Question 3. You are attempting to install software outside the manufacturer's approved software repository. Which of the following vulnerabilities is associated with doing this? Now, guys, this is something you can go and do on mobile devices like phones and tablets, but it's also something you can go and do on other devices like laptops and desktops and whatnot. Now, for the most part, we are referring to phones and tablets here. It's not limited to software and tablets. I've seen this happen on all kinds of platforms and devices. So whenever you try and install software outside the approved manufacturer's repository, what is that called? Is it memory injection? No, guys. Memory injection is kind of sort of like an attack of sorts. So we're trying to install software here. We're not trying to do some sort of attacking of some kind. So memory injection is when I go and inject something into your RAM, and this is normally when you've got a legitimate process running in your RAM now. I'm going to go and inject something into that code, and basically it's going to get me around your authentication and things like that. I'm going to be able to gain access to something without having to authenticate. That's in a nutshell what it does. It's not the only thing what it does. It actually gets a lot deeper than that, pun intended, because this is all about RAM and all of that. So I suppose you can say I'm pretending to be one thing when in reality I'm a different thing. Almost like a Trojan horse, come to think of it. So I'm going to go and inject my code into a legitimate running program that already has access to something. This legitimate program has already authenticated, and I'm simply injecting my code into that program's code in your RAM. So in other words, my code does not need to go and authenticate. It's now kind of infecting that program which has already authenticated, if I have to put it in simple terms. Nonetheless, it's got nothing to do with this question. Jailbreaking and actually even rooting, these two are very much the same. Jailbreaking, guys, is something we do on iOS, Apple's operating system, which is predominantly for phones and tablets. Rooting is something we normally do on Android, which is, well, Google's operating system. Both of these involves unlocking that device. Not for the exact same reason though, so there are similarities between the two. Jailbreaking on the Apple side of things is more to unlock that device so you can go and install programs which is not from Apple Store. Because, you know, you guys might have seen, well, for those of you that's using iPhones and things like that, it kind of forces you to use their App Store from the factory. But what if you don't want to do that? What if you want to install an app that is not from their store? Well, you'll have to go and unlock that device of yours, and that is called jailbreaking. Rooting, on the other hand, which is more for Android devices, that's the terminology we use for Android, it allows us to do more than just that. Now, to be fair, yes, rooting can theoretically be used to install apps which are not from the manufacturer's app store. But you don't need to go and root a device. So if we're talking about an Android device here, guys, you don't need to go and root it to be able to go and install apps which is not from the store. It's not locked like Apple's devices. Apple's devices are locked. You have to go and unlock them generally to be able to go and install an app which is not from their store. And that's called jailbreaking. We're not talking about Apple here. And on Android devices, you don't need to go and unlock it. You can go and unlock it. You'll get other benefits, but you don't need to go and unlock it. So if you want to go and install a device on any platform, and let's say it's not from their respective store, that term, guys, is called side loading. Side loading is to install an app which is not from the approved manufacturer's store. So if you look at Microsoft, this might be when I want to go and install software which is not from the Microsoft store. Technically, kind of. If you look at Android, so instead of me installing an app which is from the Play Store, because that's normally what Android uses, if I go and open a browser on Android, and I go and download an app from some other website, even if it's a sketchy website, and I install it, I don't need to root my device to be able to do that. I can just go and open a browser, go to a website which is not a Play Store, and install an app from there. That, guys, is called side loading. So as soon as you install from a source other than the approved store, it's called side loading. So that is the answer here. But in case if you're curious about the rooting I mentioned earlier, if you want to know more about it, it unlocks that device as well. It allows you to go and do things like overclocking, do all kinds of weird system changes you would normally not be able to do. Jailbreaking doesn't allow that, not really. Jailbreaking just allows you to go and install software on an Apple device that's, well, otherwise would have to be installed from their app store. Rooting does way more than that. So rooting allows you to go and change all kinds of system settings on that device. And to a certain degree, it can even be used for hacking purposes. So, yeah, rooting, very powerful. You've got full control over that device is what we're saying. Anyway, folks, question 4. You need to find a solution that creates an added layer of security preventing unauthorized access to internal company resources. Which of the following would be the best solution? Now, proxy server is a form of security, yes, but on its own, this is normally more used for your internal staff when they're trying to access outside resources. So it serves multiple purposes, but in a nutshell, the most common example would be if you've got internal people inside your company and you want to prevent them from going to certain websites. A proxy server can actually help aid with that. So think of it as a bouncer by the door. And if it sees them trying to go to Facebook or YouTube and things like that, if they're not allowed to do that, it's going to see that they're trying to go to Facebook or YouTube, and it's going to block that traffic. But it does not prevent people from outside the company having access to, well, internal company resources. It's not very good at that. A jump server, so far, yes, that is the answer. A jump server, folks, is a server you've got to go and connect to first before you connect to the actual actual resource that you want to go and connect to. The actual resources might in fact be another server for all we know. So maybe I'm going to go to server A first. Server A is this jump server. And that's going to allow me to get to server B. There's not a direct way to get to server B. I've got to go to server A first and then server B. So think of it as an extra hop, hence the name, jump server. Now to be able to get to the jump server, you need to obviously authenticate and connect. And once you get there, it's going to require again more authentication, extra authentication. So jump server, guys, is an extra way of adding an extra layer of security. Very good when it comes to adding layers of security, like the question once. Answer C, hypervisor. So yes, can be used as security, but not what we have in mind here when it comes to this particular scenario. A hypervisor is software that we normally run on a machine, guys, that allows us to create virtual machines. So in a sense of isolation, yes, it would achieve that. In a sense of virtualization, yes, it would achieve that. But I wouldn't say it's going to outright prevent unauthorized access to internal company resources. It might be seen as a layer, technically it could be seen as a layer. But, the person might have access to the host on which this hypervisor is running. So for all we know, they've got access to the host, they just don't have access to the virtual machine. So it's not the best security, it's not ideal. So far, answer B is better than hypervisor. If you look at answer D, RDP server, remote desktop protocol server and things like that. So that's going to allow people to go and remote connect to your resources from outside. So they'll have to authenticate, but it's not, generally the security is not as tight as a jump server. A jump server, they might have to authenticate twice. So they'll have to authenticate when they connect to your resources remotely. And then again from there, when they connect to the next hop, when they have to go to the next hop, they'll authenticate a second time. So at the very least, they'll have to authenticate twice in most cases. Whereas opposed to an RDP, they might just have to authenticate once. So B, jump server, is the more secure one here, guys. That is the answer. Question 5. During a security incident, that means something happened, you and your team identified sustained network traffic from a malicious IP address. So there's a random IP address that I sucked out of my thumb. A security analyst is creating an inbound firewall to block the IP address from accessing the organization's network. Which of the following fulfills this request? Now guys, the answers I've got here at the bottom, these are actual things that you'll have to go and do on a network to be able to go and block traffic. So it's not always going to be exactly like this, but sometimes it's nearly identical. So normally most network appliances that does this, they work more or less in the same way. Even though they might be a different brand and a different model, they'll work in the same way. So what are we trying to do, guys? We are trying to block traffic that's coming from that address. So what we're going to do here, guys, with regards to access lists, the first IP address in that little command has to be the source where it's coming from. The second one is where it's going to. So out of these 4 commands, which one of them has got an IP address that shows that one that's in the initial question, where it's coming from? That will be the 2 middle ones. If you look at answer B and answer C, both of them show the source IP as 10.2.5.11. So that is the correct source IP address. So it's coming from the correct source IP address. Do we want to block or allow from that source? We're trying to block. So if you look at answer B, it says it's going to allow traffic from that IP address. If you look at answer C, it says it's going to block from that specific IP address. Now just in case you're curious, if you look at answer A and D there, we know it's not answer A and D. Answer A there says, once again, it's going to block, but from where? It just shows a bunch of zeros. Now, for those of you that don't know what that means, if it shows a bunch of zeros, it means all traffic. So, block all traffic coming in is what answer A says. If you look at answer D, it says permit, not block. It says permit all traffic coming in. So, answer D is going to allow all traffic to come in. Any traffic will be allowed to come in. If you look at answer A, it says it's going to deny any traffic. We don't want to block all. We don't want to allow all. We want to block a specific IP address. So we're looking for one that says deny. We can see answer C here says deny. But we're looking for one that says deny a specific IP. And that is answer C. Now if you look at the rest of the command is actually already irrelevant here because you already know what the answer is. It says destination 000. That means any IP address. So block specifically 10.2.5.11, block specifically that IP from going to any destination in my company. But if you really wanted to, this is not part of this specific question, if that destination IP address was something else, guys, that is if you block or deny them from going to a specific IP address in your company. So maybe they can go and access anything else in your company, but when it comes to a specific IP in your company, they'll be blocked or allowed. Now, folks, considering it says destination is 0000, that means any destination inside your company. So I want to specifically block that IP there, and it's going to be blocked from going to any address in this company. The fact that it says 0 means it's blocked from going to any destination inside this company. Question 6. The company you work for has purchased cyber insurance to address items listed on the risk register. Which of the following strategies does this represent? Alright, so if you look at these 4 strategies we've got in front of us, guys, very tricky. So when you go and purchase some sort of insurance, if you think about it, we are transferring the risk to somebody else. Think of this as car insurance, guys. Why do we get car insurance? I know in some countries it's compulsory. It's the law to have insurance in some countries. And in other countries it's not compulsory. If you look at my country, you don't have to have car insurance. It's completely optional. Now let's use a country where it's optional. Do I have to have insurance? I don't. But if I don't have insurance on my car and something were to happen, let's say I get into an accident, the vehicle gets stolen, who is at risk here? I am. It is my risk. It is my asset. Should it get into an accident, this vehicle, or should it get stolen? I take full risk. It's going to be fully my damage. It's going to come fully out of my pocket. But if I were to get myself car insurance, yes, it's still my asset, but I would be transferring that risk to the insurance company. So if it gets stolen after that, does the money come out of my pocket? No, it comes out of the pocket of the insurance company. I have transferred the risk, is what I did. If I get into an accident then, does it come out of my pocket? Nope, it comes out of the pocket of the insurance company. So the same can be said about cyber insurance here, guys. You are transferring that risk to the cyber insurance company. It's now their problem. They are going to be concerned about your security well-being because they are at risk. You're not at risk, so what do you care? Anyway, folks, before we move on to question 7, just to quickly mention what the other 3 answers there is. We know the answer is B here now because we are transferring the risk. If you look at answer A, well, actually all 4 of these are legitimate answers when it comes to risk management. A, meaning accept, is to accept the risk. You know about the risk, you are aware of the risk, but you are purposely, let's say, gonna go and ignore it. It's not that you don't know about it, you ignore it because maybe the risk is not so big. The cost of implementing it, or the amount of work it's gonna take to go and implement it, it's just simply not worth it. Maybe it's a minor little risk and you and a company are willing to deal with it. You're willing to accept that risk. It's a small little risk in most cases. So accept is normally something you only see happening with small risks. If it's a high risk, then no. Then you're probably going to see them avoiding it, mitigating it, or transferring it. Normally avoiding it or mitigating it. Now, in terms of avoiding the risk, guys, the term avoid in risk management means you're going to completely remove that risk. Probably the best way to deal with something, but completely removing a risk does sometimes require a lot of funds, a lot of effort, a lot of time. So avoid means you're not just dealing with it, you are completely removing it from the equation. So it's not going to be a problem going forward anymore. You're completely eliminating that risk. That's what avoiding means. Mitigate, yeah, you're still dealing with it, but you're not completely getting rid of it. You're just kind of like dealing with the symptoms. That's kind of what mitigate is. You're putting measures in place, all that, you're dealing with it, but you're not completely outright eliminating the risk. So sometimes it's just not possible to completely outright eliminate the risk. It depends on what we're talking about here. Question 7. You have been tasked by the company BurningIceTech to protect data on employees' laptops. Which of the following encryption techniques should you use? Now, funny enough, this is a question I've seen them ask in the exam a lot. Well, different variations of this question. So you'll find them asking about, when it comes to protecting laptops in remote locations quite a lot. And you're always going to have to go and deal with that. And it's normally going to entail the same kind of answer, more or less. So which of the following encryption techniques should you use? all 4 of them are encryption or can be encryption, including A, which says partition, guys. Partition is to go and encrypt only a certain partition on your hard drive, on your volume. Full disk is to encrypt the whole hard drive, the whole laptop as a whole. So if you look at Windows, it'll probably be something like BitLocker. If you look at Apple, I think it's called Vault, So that'll be to go and encrypt the full hard drive. Asymmetric also is encryption, but it normally involves working with a private key and a public key. This is normally if you're sharing data of someone. It's not ideal for encrypting laptops. So for laptops, the answer is going to be between A and B. I would suggest you go and choose B. That is to encrypt the full hard drive on the laptop. So in the event of this laptop landing in the wrong hands, it's rendered completely useless. They won't be able to do anything on that laptop without the key. If you do partition encryption on that laptop, assuming it even has more than one partition, it's only going to be one partition that's going to be encrypted. They might still potentially see something else on the other partitions that is accessible to the public. So we want to completely eliminate that risk by completely encrypting the full hard drive of that laptop. Asymmetric encryption, like I said, uses a private and a public key. That is generally more used for sharing data. If I want to go and send you data in some sort of way, I'm going to give you the one key, I'm going to use a different key, and that's normally how it's going to work. The encryption is not as good as full disk encryption. Database, well, the name tells you what you need to know. It's meant for databases. Are we dealing with a database here? No, we're not. We're dealing with laptops here, guys. So we're not going to be using database security on a laptop. It makes no sense. So the answer is and remains B, full disk encryption. Question 8. You need to identify potential hacker activities without affecting production servers. Which of the following can be used to achieve this goal? So you've got A, a honey pot. You get many honey. You get honey nets. You get honey this, honey that. If you guys go and look it up, if you guys did the course, you would know that I've covered this topic already, and I covered all of them, not just the honey pot. So honey pot, guys, is fake files, fake servers, in this case fake servers, and I'm going to try and trick the hackers into trying to access these servers or hack these servers, these fake servers of mine. And when they do that, it buys me time, me and my team. When they do that, it gives us time to observe their techniques, to see what they are doing to gain access in the first place. How are they gaining access? So it buys us time, and it gives us information about their activities. I'm kind of giving the answer here. Yes, the answer is A. So while they're dealing with the fake servers, by the time they realize it's fake, if they even realize it's fake, they normally will realize it's fake sooner or later. By then, I've already seen what they're up to. I already know that they're there. I already know they're busy trying to hack my servers, and I can go and disconnect the servers, or I can go and implement the necessary precautions because I now know what techniques they're actually using. So the answer is A, yes, honeypot. Geofencing, guys, is to kind of lock something down to a certain region. This is normally your users. So a lot of companies are using it these days, especially if so many people working remotely. You guys have probably seen half of staff members these days are working remotely, if not more than half. So you're going to allow them to connect remotely, but they've got to be in a certain location. They've got to be at their house, or they've got to be at a certain other office perhaps, or maybe they've got to be at your office perhaps. If they take the company laptop, even though they might have a company username and a company password, it's not going to work if they're off-site. They've got to be in the office, or they've got to be at whatever location you specified. And we normally do this with public IP address or GPS location. But public IP address is the more popular one out of the two. If we look at video surveillance, do I need to say what that is? That's like CCTV cameras and stuff like that. So if someone is physically doing something, yes, I can see what they're doing, assuming me or somebody is keeping an eye on the camera screen. But it's not really meant for hackers. Remember, hackers, guys, these threat actors are going to be doing things digitally, not physically. Video surveillance is for physical crimes, to see what people did or to discourage them physically. But it's not going to discourage someone digitally. And even if they are doing something digitally, I'm not going to be able to see this on the cameras. It's not going to help me one bit when it comes to digital crime, which is what we are experiencing here. If you look at zero trust, guys, this entails a lot of things. It's not just one thing. So zero trust, for example, means you can go and force your users to go and provide the username and password around every corner. Everything they log into, they've got to prove their identity. I can go and, for example, segment my network into smaller networks. So if somebody were to gain access to my network, they might potentially only have access to one small part of the network, not the full network as a whole. And it includes a whole bunch of other things, but it does not allow me to monitor the hacker's activities. So I want to identify the hacker's activities. I want to see what they're up to. And that is going to be the honeypot, guys. It allows me to identify that we are under attack because it's like a diversion. You're putting out bait. It's kind of like when you've got a mouse or something and you're putting out bait. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm putting out bait there. I want to see when and if we are under attack. And if we are, I want to be able to see what they're up to when they attack us. And honeypot is the best way to go and do that. Question 9. When it comes to hiring threat actors, hackers in other words, which of the following are most likely to be hired by a foreign government to attack critical systems located in other countries? So folks, if there's some foreign government out there that wants to hire a hacker or a group of hackers, which ones would they go about hiring when it comes to attacking another country? Is it A, a whistleblower? No, a whistleblower in IT is kind of the same as in real life, guys. It makes no sense. So no, it's not a whistleblower. Is it B, an organized crime group? Could be. Is it answer C, hacktivist? Could be, if you go look at the definition of organized crime and hacktivists, guys, very, very much the same. So the biggest difference between those two is going to be the ultimate goal here. If we look at answer D, unskilled attacker. No. So when it comes to hiring probably a group of attackers, which one would I go and hire, guys? It's going to be between B and C. And I'm going to tell you the answer. It is B. Organized crime, guys, they're normally driven by things like profit. So whoever pays them the most, that is going to be the group that they're going to be working for. So if I want to go and hire a group to go and attack another country, it's going to be an organized crime group because they're driven by profit. They care predominantly only about money. If you look at hacktivist groups, guys, these could honestly have the same skills even. It can be the same amount of people. They may or may not even have the same skills, but their goal, their purpose is normally different. They're more driven by, political things, religious things, personal things like that. So it's a group, they've got some sort of goal in mind. It's normally not profit. And they probably want to go and hack the government or some company due to having that goal in mind. So maybe they're all part of some religion or some political party, and they can't deal with seeing another political party winning or anything like that, and they'll go and attack the opposing political party or whatever this might be. So it's not about money, it's about something else. So if you want to go and hire a group of hackers to attack another country, unless you happen to have something in common with this group, you're probably not going to be able to hire them. And normally, like I said, they don't really work for money. They've got a goal in mind, which is not money, it's something else. So even if you do have something in common with them, how are you going to hire them if it's not about the money for them? So you need to have something in common with them, and even then, I don't think you're going to manage because normally it's for other goals. It's not for profit. Organized crime, on the other hand, they couldn't care less which country you're from. You can be from the same country, a different country, same religion or a different religion. They couldn't care less. As long as you're willing to pay them, they'll get the job done. So if you want to attack another country, organized crime is the one you're going to go. Question 10. You need to add extra complexity before using a one-way data transformation algorithm. Which of the following would allow you to achieve this? Is it answer A, steganography? Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. No, guys, it's not steganography. That is when you're actually hiding something completely. You're completely hiding the existence of something. This is normally used for malicious intentions. So I'm going to go and completely hide a message inside a video file. Or I'm going to completely go and hide something inside a picture as an example. That would be an example of steganography. So unlike cryptography, where I'm just scrambling the contents so you can't figure out what it is, steganography is completely hiding the existence of that item, whatever it might be. It could be a message. So if it's a message and I use cryptography, you would still know about the existence of the message, but you just won't be able to read it because it's scrambled. Steganography completely hides the existence of the message. It'll hide it literally inside a picture or a video file or something like that. So it's a very sneaky, elaborate way for threat actors to communicate and to just in general make things happen without you knowing about it. Sneaky, right? Then you get data masking. So you get many examples and many forms of data masking, but I suppose the best example would be if you try and type in, let's say, a password on a certain screen. And instead of seeing the characters of the password, you'll just see random stars, or you'll just see random dots or random asterisk signs. It's not going to show the password unless you click on a button that says show me. And you might not even see that button. Some places don't even have that button. So it's kind of sort of to help with things like shoulder surfing and things like that. Then we've got answer C, salting. That is to make a password more complex normally. Salting, guys, is to go and add a unique random string, which we call salt, to a password before it's actually hashed, creating a distinct hash for every password, even identical ones. Now this, guys, obviously helps with things like rainbow table attacks. It'll help against brute force attacks, making it obviously much harder to go and decrypt and all of that. So in general, yes, that is the answer, by the way. And then of course we've got key stretching there. We know it's not the answer because I just said answer C is the answer. But if you're curious what key stretching is, guys, key stretching in cybersecurity is a technique we use to go and strengthen weak passwords or keys. And the way we do that is by intentionally making them slower to verify. We're trying to slow it down. It involves applying a cryptographic hash function thousands or even millions of times to turn a short password into a long, complex, and secure key, which obviously significantly increases the time and the compute resources which we need, or which the attacker will need, to perform something like a brute force attack. So we're trying to massively slow them down. We want to irritate them. We want to really discourage them, is what key stretching is. Anyway, folks, nonetheless, the answer here is, in fact, salting. Question 11. You are busy discarding a classified storage array and you hire an outside vendor to complete this disposal. Which of the following should you request from that vendor? Now, I'm not sure if you guys have ever experienced this, but in a lot of medium to large size companies, if and when they have a hard drive or something like a hard drive that has failed, that hard drive or whatever it is will normally get replaced very quickly, no less. Now, what happens to the old one? Do we just throw it in the bin? No, we do not. It gets destroyed. Why? Because you never know. Somebody might get a hold of that old hard drive, even though it might be failed, and they'll be willing to go and fix it because the data on there could potentially be worth millions. Now, for me to go and replace this hard drive with a new blank one, yes, it's going to cost me or the company money, but it's not nearly as much as recovering that drive. Recovering the drive, guys, normally costs a lot of money and effort. Now, I don't need to recover the data on that drive because I normally have backups. I've got clones, especially if you look at things like a RAID array. You've got the data mirrored somewhere else. So all I need to do, or all my company needs to do, is simply just take out the failed hard drive, put a new blank, fresh one in, and it's going to replicate. That's all I need to do. It's going to cost me a heck of a lot less. But your competition, your enemy, whoever, they might potentially be willing to spend all that money and all that time to get the data off that failed hard drive of yours because they don't have it to begin with, remember? And the data on there, even though it might cost them a lot of money to get it off there, the data on there is worth a lot more. These could be trade secrets, like I said. So that is why we physically destroy these hard drives if they happen to be failed. Now, these outside people, guys, that collect these drives, because it's normally an outside entity that's going to come and collect these drives, what they will normally do is, guys, they'll write down the drive's serial number or whatever this is. They will go and destroy it by incinerating it. That means melting it down. By shredding it, which means ripping it to bits and pieces, or they'll go and do an extreme version of degussing, but normally it's incineration or shredding. After they've destroyed this drive, guys, they will issue you and your company or your client's company what we call a certificate. This certificate proves this drive, or whatever it was, has been destroyed. It'll have the serial number and everything on there, and later down the line, if you or this client of yours gets audited, because auditors are going to come in, and they're going to say, hey, we see here in the logs you have a hard drive that has failed and that has been replaced. And you're going to say yes. And they're going to say, okay, cool. What have you done on the old hard drive? And you're going to say, okay, well, it's been destroyed. They're going to say, okay, cool, that sounds great, but where is the proof that it has actually been destroyed? So it's your word against, whatever. So it's not going to work. But if you've got a certificate there from an actual company that went and destroyed it, that issues you a certificate for it, yes, auditors will be happy. So that's kind of sort of what we have in mind here. So if you're busy discarding a classified storage array, like the question says, and you hire an outside vendor to complete this disposal, that is going to be a certificate that you're going to be getting. So when they say which of the following should you request from the vendor, it's going to be the certification. What certification is it? It's the certificate that says this device has been destroyed. The hard drive has been destroyed. It'll have the serial number, for example, of the hard drive on there, and you're going to put it in a lever arch file or something like that. And if the auditors come and you want to prove to them, or you need to prove to them that this drive has been destroyed, that is what you're going to show them. Now, proof of ownership has no meaning in this specific scenario. Why would you want proof of ownership from the vendor? Inventory lists, I mean, obviously you should have that. So as an IT technician in a company, you need to have an inventory list of all the hardware assets, including all the hard drives and stuff in your company. And it will have those serial numbers on there as well in the event of theft and things like that. So the inventory list is going to, at the end of the day, correspond of that certificate. So if the auditors ask for the certificate, they're going to see the serial number on there. They're going to look at your inventory list and they're going to see it corresponds with your old stock that has now been destroyed or removed and things like that. Classification also somewhat unrelated to this specific question. Alright guys, so the answer here is A. Question 12. You are in a team that combines both offensive and defensive testing techniques to protect an organization's critical systems. Which of the following teams are you in? Now you guys will see there's a bunch of colors I've got at the bottom, and in case you're wondering, just in case you guys did not do some sort of cybersecurity course yet, those are actual teams you get in cybersecurity. Each of them has a different purpose. If you look at the red team, you know, red and blue teams are the most famous ones, I think. A red team, guys, is a very offensive team. I would say they're like penetration testers, real-world people, you know, real-world hackers and things like that. They're going to simulate your company being under attack. Their purpose is to actually attack your company and to test for weaknesses and things like that. So it's to simulate real-world adversaries is what the red team's purpose is. And their purpose is also to go and uncover vulnerabilities through things like the penetration testing I just mentioned, through things like phishing. They will go and launch a fake phishing attack against your company. And if any of your users or your clients' users fall victim to this, then you'll know, okay, we need to go and send these guys back for some more training. They'll also launch attacks like social engineering to see if your people are paying attention. They will go and adopt an attacker's mindset to go and expose any and all potential security gaps you might have. So let's just say in simple terms, guys, the red team is going to pretend to be a hacker or a group of hackers. They will legitimately attack you, your company's security, as if they are a legitimate group of hackers. They'll try any attack that a hacker might potentially want to go and try, and hopefully from this you will see any weakness in your company. So if your people fall victim to the phishing attacks that they've launched, then you know, we need to send these guys back for training because clearly they didn't understand the training. That is the purpose of the red team. So it's offensive, but only offensive. The question wants us to look for something offensive and defensive. If you look at the blue team, the exact opposite of the red team. So that's also not the answer. The answer is not red, it's not blue. The red team, guys, they manage the internal security operations. They'll use all kinds of tools like the SIEM solutions. They'll go and use your firewalls and a whole bunch of stuff to defend your company. Their job is to minimize the breach impact. So their job is just to be defensive. That's all they're basically going to go and do. If you look at the purple team, this is a collaboration between blue and red. It's a combination of the red team and the blue team. They're going to be working together. And then hopefully this will maximize efficiency. It's going to hopefully strengthen your defenses. So rather than a fixed team, it's a collaborative process, guys, that ensures findings from the red team, being the offensive team, improve the blue team's capabilities immediately. So yeah, I think I might have given the answer away here. So purple team is the answer here. It's a combination of offensive and defensive. So we know the answer is purple, so what to choose is a yellow team. Well guys, a yellow team is normally developers, builders, things like that. Their job is honestly just to be responsible for building, developing, and deploying secure software solutions and infrastructure. They focus on securing code before the release and often fix vulnerabilities identified by other teams, things like that. So the 4 colors I've just mentioned here, guys, believe it or not, are not actually all the colors you get. There are other colors out there in cybersecurity as well. Just to give you an idea, you also get a green team, And an orange team. So, regarding the green team, their job is to enhance security automation with code and design, as an example, if I have to put it in simple terms. If you look at the orange team, they facilitate interaction and education. So, and you get a white team too. I almost forgot, you actually get a white team as well. So the white team does things like management, compliance, there are analysts, logistics, things like that. So, but more on that later. I'm going to try and wiggle more of that into this video for you guys. So there's many. There's a yellow team, orange team, red team, purple team, blue team, green team, and white team. The two main ones, of course, being blue and red. Those are the two famous ones. Question 13. Which of the following best practices gives administrators a set period to perform changes to an operational system to ensure availability and minimize business impact? Is this a blackout plan? No, guys. A blackout plan, first of all, is not necessarily a power blackout. A blackout plan in IT normally means loss of IT systems. That's what a blackout plan means in IT. So this could be when your network is completely down, your servers are completely down. It's a loss of your IT infrastructure in a nutshell. So should your IT infrastructure in some sort of way go down, what is your plan? That's what a blackout plan is. Now this question is not talking about this. It's talking about a set period to perform changes. Now that, guys, would be scheduled downtime. The answer here is scheduled downtime. You'll find in any proper environment, especially medium to large size companies, they will normally pre-arrange downtime. You'll probably get a mail from your IT team that says, please note folks, Friday after work on 5 o'clock, the system is going to be down for half an hour or an hour for updates that needs to take place or minor maintenance or whatever, just for technical something. They don't need to necessarily know the details. They just need to know the system is going to be unavailable on this date, on this time slot, and that gives you time to go and swap something if something needs to be swapped, to go and update something, to go and restart something. It is scheduled downtime. And ideally, we arrange this after hours, ideally over a weekend, so that if something does go wrong, let's say I go and update a server, and after this update, now suddenly it doesn't want to start back up again. You don't want to have to deal with that in working hours. So if this is now after work on a Friday, then obviously you might have the whole weekend to go and deal with it. So that's why we do it after hours, preferably over a weekend. Then you've got change management boards. So change management is recording all changes that take place. That's basically what that is. So if you're going to go and change something digitally or physically, it needs to go through the change management procedure. The board is a bunch of people that needs to approve certain changes. Now, every company's change management procedure is different. For small minor changes, you might not need approval. You just need to make sure you complete the documentation that records it. So that if something goes wrong, we can go and check where we went wrong, who was responsible, on what day was this, what changes was made. So we can go backtrack our steps and just see if somebody was guilty or someone made a boo-boo. The change management board is an actual board of people that has to approve the change. So this is for very big, serious changes. They will then first want to know, what is this change you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Who's going to do it? When are you going to do it? What is the risks involved? They're going to want to know everything, and they're going to want everything except the blood sample. And then answer D, impact analysis. So that's when you or somebody is going to go and analyze what the impact of something would be. The name kind of suggests what you need to know there. More on that one later in a different question. But for now, the answer, guys, is scheduled downtime. Looking at question 14 here, folks. Which of the following describes effective change management procedures? Is it A, using a spreadsheet for tracking changes? You should track changes. That's part of your procedure. But that's just tracking it. And that spreadsheet could get lost and all of that. So it could be A, but let's first see what the other answers are. B, having a blackout plan when a patch fails. Now that is very serious. So A is not necessarily wrong, but a blackout plan is even more important. So in the event of you having a total failure of your servers or your network or whatever, you need to have some sort of contingency in place. What is your plan of action? Do you have actual servers on standby? Do you have a backup internet connection in case the internet goes off? Do you have backup switches in case your switches goes down? Do you have a backup server in case your server fails? That is the kind of things that will be included in your blackout plan. Do you have stuff on hot standby or warm standby? And just in general, what's your procedure? Who's going to be in charge of this? Is there a leader? And just in general, who's going to be responsible for what? So B is certainly more important than A. So far, B is the answer here, folks. C, approving changes after a successful deployment. Normally, you need to go and approve changes before a deployment, not after deployment. You need to get pre-approval if there's some sort of approval that needs to be signed off on. So if anybody needs to actually approve something, you might want to get that approval beforehand, not afterwards. D, using an automatic change control to bypass security updates. Can you imagine that? To bypass for security updates. Now, even though it is updates, specifically security updates, we all know security updates are very important. We can't just go and willy-nilly deploy these updates, guys. What if they're not stable? What if they're going to crash my environment? Normally, these things need to be tested. So in any medium or large size company worth its salt, you would want to go and test this. You're going to go and test this on a bunch of machines, pilot machines or pilot users for an X amount of time, possibly a couple of days or a week or a month or so. And if you're happy with the results and it doesn't seem to crash, then you go and deploy this for real to the production environment. So we don't want these updates to go and bypass my security automatically just because they're security updates. It might seem like a good idea, but remember, we need to go and test this stuff. These security updates, as legitimate as they might be, guys, they can completely bring down a company. They can completely bring it down. You need to go and test it. And even if you have tested this stuff, guys, there is no guarantee that it's going to work. So even if it has been tested, you're going to go and do this after hours. There's going to be downtime. So we're going to go and schedule downtime like we mentioned in the previous questions. And you're going to do this after hours. Just in case stuff goes sideways. You never know. Question 15. All the user workstations and servers at one of your clients are displaying a message which is asking for payment in the form of Bitcoin to access their data. Now that doesn't sound good. Which of the following types of infection is present on the systems? Now, most of you guys probably know what this is, but I've got to test you guys on this because it's something that will test you on the exam. So it doesn't matter how simple this is, you still need to know it. Is it a virus? No, guys. A virus is a piece of malicious code, normally of malicious intent, but it'll probably go and do something like break something on a machine, for example. It is generally not going to go and display a message asking for payment. Nope. Is it a Trojan? Now, Trojans are often also referred to as a Trojan horse. This is a piece of malware, guys, that pretends to be one thing normally, when in reality it's actually doing something else. It will, for example, pretend to be a useful toolbar that you installed or that got installed automatically. Meanwhile, it's doing something in the background. Or it will pretend to be some cool game that you just installed or downloaded. Meanwhile, in the background, it's doing something not so nice to your machine. Now, the interesting thing about these Trojan horses, folks, is the majority of the time, whatever they're pretending to be, that something will actually work in most cases. It kind of has to, because if it doesn't, you're going to go and uninstall it. And that's the last thing they want, because if it's uninstalled, then the Trojan horse might not end up doing what it was supposed to go and do. So whatever it pretends to do, it'll probably end up doing that for real in some cases. But in the background, it's doing something else. That is a Trojan horse. If you look at spyware, and just FYI, all four of these are malware or examples of malware. Spyware, like the name suggests, is used to spy on you. Now you get subcategories of spyware, and you even get subcategories of spyware. An example would be a keylogger, which records all the keystrokes and will send it to some threat actor somewhere in the hopes of getting something of value, something sensitive. You get the kind of spyware that will go and stream real time what you are doing to somebody else somewhere else. That's a scary thought, right? And then the last one here, guys, ransomware. What this will normally do is it will spread on a network, if your machine happens to be on a network. It's going to encrypt the machine that it's on and probably all the other machines that it spreads to. It encrypts everything on that machine. Some of them will still allow you to browse the machine, some of them don't. But normally what they have in common, all of these ransomwares, is there's going to be some form of message on your screen or the user screen displaying a timer asking for some form of ransom in a form of cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin. Now, doesn't that sound like the question? So ransomware, most of them, if not all of them, will display some sort of message saying your data has been encrypted. They will demand a ransom in the form of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin being one of them. They normally give you the account number to go and pay it into. And if you don't pay this in a matter of 48 hours or 72 hours, they threaten to go and delete your data. And just like a real hostage situation, if you pay the ransom, you might get the hostage back, being your data, or you might not. There's no guarantee. It's a 50-50. So you might get it back, you might not get it back. Generally, though, we don't recommend that you pay this ransom, because even if you do happen to get the data back, they're just going to go and re-encrypt it again shortly down the line, because they've got a backdoor in there. They've got you by the short hair. They know you're willing to pay now, and they know you're able to pay now. So you have set a precedent now that you're able to go and do that, and you're willing to go and do that. Anyway, guys, so that is the answer here. Ransomware. Question 16. You are installing an intrusion prevention system to block signature-based attacks in the environment. Now, you get intrusion prevention systems, and you get intrusion detection systems. Now, both of these are something you can find on a server, and both of them is something you can find on a firewall. There are a lot of similarities between the ones you'll find on a firewall and a server, but there's also quite a few differences between them. Now, which of the following modes will best accomplish this task? So we want to block signature-based attacks. Now, guys, I'm going to be straight with you. The answer here is active. Active is actively going to go and compare signatures for possible viruses and malicious things to whatever is happening on the network. Everything has to go through the intrusion prevention system. So anything and everything that's going through there will be compared to the signature database. And, that whole procedure is actually called active. So active mode, guys, is also referred to as inline mode for those of you that don't know. It is the best intrusion prevention system mode, especially for things like blocking signature-based attacks and things like that. It acts in real time to intercept and drop malicious traffic that matches known attack patterns. And if you go look at other modes, like your passive mode, which is not an answer here, passive mode, or should I say monitoring mode, which is one here, or detection only modes, the only thing they do is they just alert you about threats. They will detect it, they will alert you about it, and that's it. They don't exactly do anything. So monitoring is an example of a passive mode, and that is one of the answers here. Definitely not what we're looking for. Active mode, or should I say inline mode, will actively not just detect stuff, but actually do something about it, which is what we want. We want it to actually do something, not just detect and, ignore it. No. So, folks, we know the answer is active, and we know it's definitely not monitoring. So, what is audit mode? I know it's not the answer, but what is it? So, audit mode is an actual mode, just in case you're wondering. It does exist. So, it's a very widely used intrusion prevention system mode. It basically acts as a silent guardian, if you will, or a passive detection mode. So, it's actually another passive detection mode, mind you. So instead of blocking, it just once again detects stuff. So I should have actually mentioned this one earlier. So monitoring and this thing called audit, they're both passive modes, is what they are. So what is its function? Well, it monitors network traffic for suspicious activity. It will log the events, but it does not actually block anything. So it's primarily used to evaluate the impact of security policies, establish baselines of normal activity, and you'll basically identify potential false positives before enabling full block mode. That's basically what it does. As for the other one, the elephant in the room, that sensor mode, it is real, but it's not a mode per se. Instead, it's an actual thing, so to speak. So sensor is a real fundamental component, yes, but it's not typically referred to as a mode itself, like I said. Instead, guys, this is a device, or it's an appliance, or it's an actual software module that performs the inspection. So it's not exactly what it appears to be. This sensor, so to speak, operates in one of two main deployment modes, guys. So the first one will be inline mode, which we kind of spoke of earlier. So that active mode, it uses the sensor to go and detect stuff. So the sensor is placed directly in the path of network traffic. All the packets of your network traffic passes through it, allowing this sensor to detect, drop, or block malicious traffic in real time. You've got passive mode, so both of these modes are going to go through the sensor. So with passive mode, the same sensor receives a copy of the traffic via something like a tap, rather than your original packets. It can detect attacks and alert, but it cannot stop them from reaching the destination directly. So passive mode detects, it alerts, but it doesn't actually do anything. Active mode, like we said earlier, it detects and it blocks. That's what we want. We want to block. So the answer is active, folks. Moving on to question 17. Your company has client files that can only be accessed by employees who need to know the information and have specified roles in the company. So it's a need to know basis. Only people that need to know this information, only they have access. Which security concept best describes this? So is it integrity? No, not exactly, guys. Integrity means something is original. It is authentic. Somebody has not tampered with it. Now, it does not necessarily mean somebody won't know the information and that they won't be able to see the information. So you can think of this as a contract. This can be a digital contract. It can be a physical contract. Now, anybody can see the contents of this contract, but the person who the deal is with, they will have to sign it. So maybe this is a contract between me and you. We can sign this physically. We can sign this digitally. Our signatures are on there. So that gives it integrity. If either party, me or you, try and change something in this contract, well, then the signature is going to be missing. My signature will be missing or yours will be missing. So you don't have integrity anymore. It's not authentic anymore. But it does not stop anybody else from reading the contents of this contract. I'm just sucking things out of my thumb here, guys. It's just to kind of sort of give you the idea of what integrity is. And if we look at confidentiality, yes, that is the answer. It means only people that needs to know will know. Only people that needs to see will see. This could be something as simple as an envelope in real life, guys. So if you have a salary or a pay slip, something like that, if I put it in an envelope, it doesn't give you security, no, because someone can obviously steal this envelope and they can see the contents. But it does give you some form of confidentiality, because people will see there's an envelope in your hand, but they won't know what the contents is. They won't be able to see the contents. And even if they do know what the contents is, let's say you tell them, hey, it's my salary. Do they know what it says? No, they don't, because they can't see it. It gives you confidentiality. So confidentiality means it's for certain people's eyes only. That's the answer. If you look at non-repudiation, guys, that normally means someone won't be able to go and deny that they did something. Kind of like, I want to say log files might be an example of that. So somebody goes and sends an email or they go and do something. There's non-disputable evidence that they've done this. 100% proof that can prove that this individual on this day did this task. That's non-repudiation. Somebody cannot go and deny that they've done something. So in IT, that's always very important, because we don't want someone to go and commit some sort of digital crime and then afterwards just be able to shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know anything about this. We don't want that. So this has got nothing to do with what the question says here. If we look at availability, availability is to make sure something's always available. Some sort of resource. This could be data, could be documents, could be whatever. How you achieve this is up to you. So this can be something as simple as just making sure you've got backup power, backup internet, backup servers, backup drives, backup network switches. You get the idea. So making sure whatever resource is being, offered or rendered here, making sure it's not unavailable. So if this is something as simple as data, it needs to always be available. Moving you guys along to question 18 here. You are investigating a workstation that is suspected of outbound communication to a command and control server. Oh boy. During the investigation, you discover that logs on the endpoint were deleted. Now that's not good. Which of the following logs should you look at next? So somebody is up to no good, and the same somebody is trying to cover their tracks, obviously. So where can we go and look to hopefully catch them out? Is it an ACL? ACL, guys, is short for Access Control List. That is something we normally go and implement on a network to go and control the flow of traffic. You can do this in various places, but my favorite is to do this on a network switch. So depending on where you are coming from and where you're going to, it will deny or block that traffic. But it's not going to show me logs of who has gone and done whatever. No, it doesn't do that. Is it B, a firewall? Yes. Now, to be clear, it does in real life depend on what kind of firewall we're actually talking about here. If you look at your normal Windows firewall, no, it's not going to show you what we want. But there are certain software-based firewalls, third-party ones, that can maybe show you this. And if you go look at physical firewalls, yes, they will show you logs. These are the kinds of logs that firewall people will often have to go and download and present to their line managers and whoever, for audit purposes, investigation purposes, and whatever. They're actually downloadable, and you can save them and present them to whoever needs to see this, even if it's just yourself that needs to see this. So a firewall's logs will absolutely show you the flow of traffic. It'll show you who connected to what, when, where, everything. And that is the answer here, guys. Answer C, intrusion prevention system. Its job is to go and prevent intrusion, and ironically this is something you can actually find on a firewall, but it's not necessarily going to go and log it, guys. So intrusion prevention system, I can say, is a division of a firewall, a subcategory, or it's a subcategory on a server. So by saying firewall, I'm actually saying IPS and then some. So firewall is the more correct answer here. IPS on its own, no, not really. Answer D is a bit vague. It says Windows Security, and Windows Security does ironically include a firewall. But for me just to say Windows Security is a bit vague. Am I talking about the antivirus, or what exactly am I talking about here? Because Windows Security, guys, includes a lot of things. Firewall is being dead on about what and where you're going to find these logs. And also, keep in mind, like I said earlier, the Windows firewall does not exactly keep logs. It's eh. So saying Windows Security, which includes Windows Firewall, no. We are talking about a physical firewall. So the answer is B, firewall. Question 19. Your client's business needs a recovery site, but does not require immediate failover. Now, that is something you don't hear every day. The client also wants to reduce the workload required to recover from an outage. Which of the following recovery sites is the best option? Now, guys, just to put more perspective to this, most companies want to be able to recover as quickly as possible, if not near immediate. That's what companies want. It's basically a hot standby, and I'm actually giving the answer away here, or part of the answer. A hot standby, or as they just call it in this scenario, hot, is when you are able to recover immediately, instantaneously. So if something becomes unavailable, it actually is not unavailable, if I have to put it in simple terms. So if it's a server that crashes, you've got another server that takes over immediately, instantaneously. That is what hot means. So it's so instantaneous that the users that is accessing this resource would not even know there was a problem. They don't. This gives you time to go and figure out what the heck just happened, to go and fix it and all of that. So hot is the best one, probably one of the best kinds of backups or failovers you can have, but it's also the most expensive. Hot might be the fastest and the best, but it is the most expensive. If you look at a warm standby, guys, or a warm backup, you do have it close by. It's for the most part pre-built. So if this is servers or something, for example, it's for the most part pre-built. The infrastructure is already there, but it might be turned off as an example. So maybe you've got servers and stuff there. It's for the most part pre-built and configured, but it's not turned on. So if something fails, you or somebody will have to go and turn it on first, go and synchronize it and all of that. So this could take a couple of minutes or a couple of hours to get this up and running again. Where hot is instantaneous. A cold backup or a cold standby is something that might not have any settings configured yet. It might not have any infrastructure yet, but it's a backup of sorts. So this can take hours. Often this could take days or weeks in some cases. So you'll get there. You're not going to lose your data. You'll get there. But if you are concerned about, downtime, then this is maybe not the one that you want to go for. So if it does not affect you or your business that much, the downtime, and you can afford to wait a couple of days or weeks, then this might not be a bad option. It's going to take a heck of a lot longer to get you back up and running, but if it doesn't really affect your business in the sense of financially and things like that, then why not? Go for a cold standby. That might sound like the answer, but it's not. The answer, guys, in case you're wondering, is warm. So if you look at the question again, it says the client's business needs a recovery site, but does not require immediate failover. So it specifically says does not require immediate failover. The only one here that provides immediate failover is hot. So that little line there rules out answer A being hot. Now the question also says the client also wants to reduce the workload required to recover from an outage. So if we went for cold, that would require a lot of workload because cold has nothing configured. Nothing has been built yet. It's pretty much just a backup. So it's going to be a lot of work to go and get that back up and running again. You're going to have to go and create the infrastructure. You're going to have to go and build it and configure it and stuff. It's a nightmare to go and do that. You'll get there, but it's a nightmare. So considering the question also says you want to reduce the workload, warm is the better one. It's the compromise between hot and cold. Now you're probably wondering, okay, so what is D? Because we haven't actually covered D. D is kind of like an off-site backup. It's going to take a while. We don't know where this undisclosed off-site backup is. So if you are concerned about some sort of physical disaster, maybe you're concerned about a robbery where they come and steal your servers, or you're concerned about some other natural disaster like a fire, a mudslide, or whatever the case might be, then an off-site backup might be ideal for you. So in the event of a physical disaster, whatever it might be, you can go resort to your off-site copies. But unless it's one of those, then no. Anyway, folks, the answer is C, a warm standby. Question 20. You have been tasked with putting together a documented plan describing how the organization will keep operating in the event of a global incident. Oh, wow. Which of the following plans are you creating? Is it A, a business continuity plan? Yes, guys. Continuity means this business can keep going. So how can we keep going? That's what this plan is. So continuity means should something happen, whatever the something is, how can we keep things going? That's a business continuity plan. So in the event of a power failure, what is your continuity plan? Part of that would be to have a generator in place, with UPSs, with nice big fat batteries, things like that. In the event of an internet failure, what is your plan? Maybe you've got a satellite internet as a backup there. We don't know. So all of this forms part of your business continuity plan. Disaster recovery is after something has already happened. This is most likely a server that might have crashed. Maybe there's a ransomware attack or there was massive theft. How do you recover from that? That's what that plan is. Physical security. I mean, do I need to explain what physical security is? Probably not. But part of that would be to go and say, you know what? We're going to have security guards. We're going to have cameras, motion sensors. We're going to have bollards by certain locations so cars can't go and drive into places or into objects. Things like that. Change management, guys. Both change management and physical security is not really a plan. It's more things that you do. So change management is anything that needs to take place in your company. Any change. So if you need to go and upgrade something, downgrade something, swap something, fix something, whatever, that needs to usually go through the change management procedure. So if it's a small change that takes place, you still need to go and document it via the change management procedure, but you might not necessarily need approval. You just need to document it. If it's a huge change that takes place, then you might need approval first. So it varies from company to company. Some companies require you to go and get approval for any and all changes that take place. Doesn't matter how small it is. Then you get companies that will maybe only need you to go and approve a big change, something serious. It also depends on the risk and how much it affects the business. So if it's something small, it might be pre-approved. You just need to go and document it. That's basically what change management is. Anyway, nonetheless, the answer here is business continuity, guys. Question 21. You work for a company called BurningIceTech. Little self-promo there. You notice that the research and development department is not using the company VPN when accessing various company-related services and systems. Which of the following scenarios describes this activity of the research and development departments? In other words, the fact that they're not using the company VPN, what do we call that? Is it data exfiltration? No, data exfiltration, guys, is when this person or groups of people are actively, exfiltrating data from your company. They're stealing data directly from your company. There's proof of that. Nowhere here in this question is there any proof of that happening here. So it's not a VPN. In fact, if they're not using a VPN, we'll probably be able to see even more what they're doing. If it's a VPN they're using, then it's encrypted. We can't see what they're doing. But the fact that they're not using a VPN means we can see what they're doing. So we would definitely know if they were stealing data. So that's a stupid way to go about it if you want to steal company data. It's not answer A. If you look at answer B, nation-state attack, that is massive and way beyond the boundaries of this question. So a nation-state attack, guys, in cybersecurity is a highly sophisticated, well-resourced, and stealthy digital operation backed by a government, for example, to advance national interests such as espionage, theft of intellectual property, or just in general sabotaging critical infrastructure. So guys, these attacks often target government agencies, military, or even critical infrastructure providers. So it's not that. If we look at answer C, shadow IT. So far that's the answer, guys. Shadow IT is when you've got employees that go and use their own equipment or own software, which might not be approved by the company. That's one example of shadow IT. Now, sometimes it does get stuff done. I would not say people are doing it maliciously. There's a lot of shadow IT you'll find in companies where people will go and use softwares, equipments, or stuff which is not approved by the company, but it does actually make their lives easier. The problem with things like shadow IT, guys, is since it's not approved, the IT team might not know about it, and if they don't know about it, and since it's not approved, there's obviously risks involved. There might be a reason why it's not approved, because it was too risky to go and use this software or this equipment or whatever it might be. Now, when we say shadow IT, guys, it's not just using stuff you're not supposed to, it's also not using stuff you're not supposed to. It's also not using stuff that you are supposed to go and use. So the fact that they're not using the VPN when they were supposed to use it, that can also be seen as shadow IT. They're basically doing their own thing. They're disobeying the company. So the company's instructions is they should be using a VPN, yet they're not. The fact that they're doing what they want to is what we call shadow IT. So if they install software when they're not supposed to, that's shadow IT. If they go and use physical equipment they're not supposed to, that's shadow IT. If they are going to go and use a VPN when they were not supposed to, that's shadow IT. Or if they don't use it when they were supposed to, both ways is seen as shadow IT. So far the answer is C. If we look at answer D, espionage. No, guys. Espionage is when you're trying to, for example, share a company's secrets or anything like that. Now, if you think about it, if you are going to go and commit espionage, you probably do want to go and use a VPN because then it's encrypted. The companies can't see what you're doing. So if you're going to go and commit some sort of espionage, the last thing you want to go and do is to go and disable the VPN, because then I'm going to actually really be able to see what you're up to. So I would definitely know if you're up to espionage in that scenario. So no, it's not espionage. So the fact that they just turned off the VPN and they're not using it when they were supposed to, that's shadow IT. Anyway, guys, moving on to question 22. The sales department in BurningIceTech, there I go again promoting myself. So the sales department in BurningIceTech set up its own project management software without telling the appropriate departments. What does that sound like? If you paid attention to the previous question, you might know the answer here. So which of the following describes this scenario? Which one is it? Now, if you guys paid attention to the previous question, you would know the answer is shadow IT. So if you go and install software when you were not supposed to, software that was not approved, that is shadow IT. If you go and use hardware equipment and device that you were not supposed to, that is also shadow IT. So the fact that they went and got their own project management software without telling the appropriate departments, shadow IT. The answer is A. Now answer B, inside the threat, that's when you've got somebody inside your company, maybe multiple somebodies, and they are now, going to go and exploit your company. They're going to go and share your data, maybe of your competition, things like that. So these are often going to be disgruntled employees in most cases. They're upset about something, and now they want to damage the company or share information of your competition. You never know. Service disruption can be a lot of things. That's quite vague to just say service disruption. So this could be something as simple as a denial of service attack for all we know. If that is going to go and disturb some sort of service, it could be a small service, it could be a big service. Data exfiltration, we know what that is due to the previous question. That is when someone or something is actively trying to get information out of your company. And there's absolutely no mention of information going missing or it being detected that it might be shared outside the company. The answer is A. Question 23. You suspect insider threat actors are attempting data exfiltration. So in other words, people inside your company, which most likely work for you, they are attempting to steal your company's data. They're trying to get it out of the company in some sort of weird, elaborate way. Which of the following threat vectors is most commonly utilized by insider threat actors? Is it spear phishing emails? Now, I'm not saying these inside threat actors are not going to try a spear phishing email. I mean, they work inside the company. So they might still go and send an email to a specific individual in the company in the hopes of getting some sort of login details or something like that. But it doesn't make sense regarding the question. Remember, they are trying to steal data. So sending a phishing email to a specific person in the company, Yes, they'll probably know who to target, and let's say they even manage to get this person's username. That does not necessarily mean they'll be able to steal data. So for people attempting to steal data, people specifically in company, I would not say A. And when the question says most commonly utilized by insider threat actors if they're trying to steal data. So it's not A. Is it B? Unidentified removable devices. Yes, guys. Remember, these folks that are inside your company are going to try and steal the data. So something else they might try and do, which is not even listed here, is they might try and upload it to some cloud website like OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, or one of those other lesser known ones. These are also symptoms of people trying to steal information outside of your company. People inside your company will go and try and use these websites. So that's why you'll find many companies out there, depending on what industry they're in and all kinds of things like that, they will actively block people from having the ability to go and plug in things like flash drives, external drives into their PCs. If you plug them in, nothing happens. If you plug another USB device in, it detects that device and works just fine. But if you plug in a removable storage device, it does not even start that device. You can turn this off in a BIOS, you can turn it off in the registry, you can go block it via group policies. There's many ways that we go and use to achieve that goal. So yes, unidentified removable devices is absolutely something that inside people will go and use to try and steal your data, which is why we block it. Answer C, which we know is not the answer, impersonation of business units through typo squatting. Now, if you guys don't know what typo squatting is, that is when someone goes and changes the URL, so now it's the web address, in such a way that it looks like the real website, but if you look very closely at the URL for the website, you'll see there's a small letter that might be different. So one small aspect of it might be different. So they try and get it as close as possible to the original website address, so close that if you don't really pay attention, you might think you are on the original website. So that could be seen, I suppose, as phishing to a certain extent, kind of, sort of. So typo squatting is often combined with phishing. So I'm going to try and trick you or the user into going to the wrong website because the URL is going to look like it's on the right website. I just need to get the website itself to look legitimate. And there you go. I suppose this could be combined with a phishing attack. But typo squatting in a nutshell is just changing the URL in such a way so that it looks very flippin' close to the original website, whatever original website this might be. So that's absolutely not what's happening here in this specific question. So it's not C. Answer D. Default network device credentials. Now what that means, guys, I'm sure you guys would have seen this. If you get yourself a new network device, like a new router, a new switch, a new firewall, from the factory they come with default credentials. A default username and a default password. I suppose you can call this a factory username and password. The username is most often going to be something like admin, and the password will usually be something like admin2, or it'll be admin1234, or the password will be blank. Now, something you guys will probably know if you've done a Security Plus course is you always change the default password, maybe even the username, but especially the default password. Because threat actors out there, they normally know what these default passwords are. I mean, heck, even you know what it is now. So we take advantage of that. Now, people inside your company are not going to be using the default credentials. They might even know what the credentials are. Now, default credentials, guys, is normally what an outside threat actor will go and use. Remember, they don't have access to your network yet. They will try and gain access to your network by using default credentials. They're going to hope that you did not change it. And if you did change it, this will hopefully stop them at least from gaining access via that method. People inside your company, inside threat actors, generally don't need access to your devices. They already have access. They're in your network. They've got an account. They may or may not already have privilege, which is what makes them so flippin' dangerous. So they already have access to the data. It's just a matter of getting it out of the company, which is why B is the answer here. Question 24. There has been an identified vulnerability on one of the systems that was scanned. You conduct a vulnerability scan yourself on the system and notice it is not present. Which of the following describes this? Now, guys, I'm going to be straight with you guys. This one is a false positive. So if someone or something detected something and then the second person goes and investigates and sees, oh, you know what, this is actually not what it appeared to be, we call that a false positive. So if it was, in fact, what it appeared to be, it would be called a true positive. So positive means something has been detected if we're looking at detection systems and things like that. So positive means something has been detected. If we say false positive, we mean the original detection was incorrect. If we say true positive, we mean the original detection was correct. Now, if you look at answer B and answer D, false negative and true negative. So if we look at answer B, it means the original detection was negative and it turns out to be incorrect. It was in fact a threat. So originally it was registered as a negative or seen as a negative. So in other words, it was seen as no threat. But now we've come to the conclusion afterwards with a second look, then we saw, oh, hang on, that was actually incorrect. So it's false. It's a false negative. It was and is indeed a threat. So that's a very dangerous situation you don't want to find yourself in. Hopefully no company finds itself in that situation. D means it's a true negative. So first of all, it was detected as a negative, and then afterwards, when a second pair of eyes went over it, or a second system went over it, it was still negative. So you want a true negative. A true negative means there is nothing. It detected it as nothing, and it turned out to be nothing the second time. A false positive is not too bad. It means something got detected. Your security might just be too sensitive, and after investigating, you realized, oh, okay, you know what, it actually is nothing. Rather have a false positive than have your systems not detect something at all. That is the last thing you want. Anyway, let's go on to question 25 here, boys and girls. You have been asked by a client to install unauthorized software and features on their smartphone which are not available on this phone's default software. Which of the following would allow you to achieve this? Now, you might think this is side loading because of what I said earlier in this video. Earlier in this video, we said the person wants to go and install software on their device, and I told you guys the answer was not jailbreaking or rooting. So if you want to go and install software on a device which is not necessarily in their app store, that could be seen as side loading. But the fact that this user wants to go and do it specifically on a smartphone, and it's specifically unauthorized software and features, yes, you're going to have to go and jailbreak this device or root it, depending on whether we're talking about Android or Apple. Now, rooting is not listed as an answer here, so we can safely assume it's jailbreaking. You'll find in the exam they will do the same as me. They will normally not give you jailbreaking and rooting both as an answer in the same question. Well, or at least not of something like this. Because of this, it could be either or. So the only time they'll give you both as an answer is if they are testing you on specifically the differences between those. For example, jailbreaking allows you to install unauthorized software and features on an Apple device. But that's pretty much all it does. Rooting can achieve that and then some. Rooting can also allow you to go and do overclocking and a whole bunch of other naughty stuff on that device. It does way more than that. So unless they're specifically testing you on the difference between jailbreaking and rooting, they will normally only mention the one or the other. Otherwise, we don't know which one the answer is here. So the fact that they want to go and install software which is not from the phone store, that could be jailbreaking or sideloading. But the fact that they said unauthorized software and features means you're going to have to go and unlock this device to allow it to go and do that. So jailbreaking it is, guys. Hyper-V is completely ruled out. That is Microsoft's version of a hypervisor. It is software you can go and add as a role on the server or on Windows, the client operating system. You have to go into that as a feature. It allows you to go and create things like virtual machines. So it's a form of virtual technology. And it's specifically for computers, servers, laptops, desktops, things like that. It is not something we run on a mobile device. If we look at answer D, cross-site scripting. That's also got nothing to do with this, guys. Cross-site scripting is when a perpetrator, like a threat actor, will go and take advantage of a website. This could possibly be a weak website where they made a little bit of a boo-boo in the coding of the website. They'll go and exploit some sort of weakness in this website. This could honestly be something as simple as the search bar. Any place on the website where you might be able to go and enter some sort of value, something like the search bar, and they'll go look for a weakness there, inject code in there, a script of sorts, basically get that script into the website because they found a weakness where they're able to inject their scripts into the website. It's going to stay on that website, and now when you, the client, or whoever you are, when you go to that website later, it's going to get into your browser and it's going to go and do stuff you don't want it to go and do. So they're exploiting a weakness on the website, injecting the code, and when your browser goes to that website, it knows this website, it trusts this website. Meanwhile, something malicious is now happening on your machine. So it's not something we see often, but it does still happen. Question 26. Out of the phases in incident response, which one involves generating reports? Now guys, incident response is something that does get covered in Security Plus quite heavily. You do need to know what all the phases are, and just FYI, I did not list all of them, I just listed 4 of them. All 4 of the ones I listed down below are official phases that you would find in incident response. I just didn't list all of them. There's about 6 of them that you guys need to know. So you need to know how many there is, you need to know what they are, you need to know in what order they go, and you need to know what each one entails. So you can think of this as knowing the troubleshooting methodology in A+ and N+. So at A+ level and even an N+ level, you needed to know the troubleshooting methodology, you needed to know how many steps there is, you needed to know in what order they go, and what each one entails. This is the same story, guys. So we want to know which one involves generating reports. Now folks, I'm going to get straight to the answer. The answer is lessons learned. Lessons learned is the last step or the last phase in incident response. So after you've done everything, then you're going to go and document everything, and you're going to go and generate your reports, and you're going to go and store that and give these reports to the relevant parties. But just in case you don't know what the other phases are, I'm actually going to go and mention all 6 of them, just in case you guys don't know. There's 6 of them. The first phase is the preparation phase. That involves establishing policies, tools, and training, such as conducting mock breaches to ensure readiness, that kind of stuff. So this is the first phase in your incident response. The second phase is normally identification and analysis, that kind of stuff. So this is detecting, validating, and analyzing security events to determine if an incident has indeed occurred, and this is often considered the most challenging stage, mind you. The third phase would be containment. I mean, the name speaks for itself. This is isolating the affected systems to prevent any further damage, which may involve immediate or short-term containment and later long-term containment. The fourth phase, folks, is eradication. Now, the name once again speaks for itself. This is removing the root cause of the threat, such as patching your systems or cleaning up malware from the environment, that kind of stuff. The fifth phase is recovery, restoring your systems to their normal operation, verifying that they are actually still secure now, and monitoring for any subsequent malicious activity perhaps. And then the sixth and the last one is lessons learned. I suppose you can also call this post-incident activity in some cases. So this is simply just to go and conduct a review, normally within 72 hours of the event, to document the incident and strengthen any future response. This is often considered the most critical phase, and yet it's also one of the most ignored phases. People tend to think, okay, well, everything is up and running now, let's just carry on. But you need to go and document all of this so that you can go and avoid this from happening again in the foreseeable future. And what if you're not there next time? At least then they can go through your notes and see, oh, shucks, boys, this is what it was last time. Let's do this and let's do that, and let's not do this and let's not do that. Anyway, folks, so hopefully this makes more sense. The answer here is C, lessons learned. That's where you're going to go and generate your reports, your documents, all that kind of stuff. Question 27. You have been tasked by your IT manager to identify legacy systems. Now, for those of you that don't know or that don't remember what legacy means, it means something is old. You've got old hardware, you've got old software, you've got old applications, something old. So if it's hardware, you tend to find no spare parts for this anymore. People may or may not even know how to go and use or troubleshoot this anymore. If it's something like an operating system or a software, it's generally not supported by the vendor or the manufacturer anymore. There's no patches, there's no updates, there's no nothing. So generally, you need to go and look for newer hardware then, or newer operating systems, or newer softwares where you can still find spare parts. If it's something physical, people need to actually know how to go and still fix this. If it's something digital, you need to be able to still find patches and remedies and stuff for vulnerabilities. That's why we go and upgrade. So now that we have a better idea what legacy is, which of the following would allow you to achieve that goal? So how are you going to identify legacy systems? Is it answer A, dynamic analysis? No, guys. That is the process of testing and evaluating a software program or an application, or a malicious file while it is actively running in a controlled environment. So this is basically a black box testing approach is what it is. It identifies vulnerabilities such as runtime errors, it'll identify things like memory leak, or even malicious behavior. But it does not identify legacy systems. That's not what it does. Is it answer B, a vulnerability scan? Yes, folks, that is the answer here. A vulnerability scan is going to go and check for any and all kinds of weaknesses just in general in your company environment. It's going to go and check, are you or any of your users or any of your systems using an outdated operating system? So maybe you are using an operating system that's no longer supported. Something like Windows 10 comes to mind because it has been retired in 2025 on October. I think it was on the 13th of October. So generally that might be seen as, outdated, legacy, dangerous. If you or the users or some sort of server are running a program that's maybe an old version of a program, it's no longer supported, no longer receives any security updates and stuff, that's also vulnerability. So just in general checks for all stuff in the environment, hardware, software wise, operating system wise, because these are generally not receiving any new updates, fixes, patches, remedies, things like that. So your answer here, folks, is indeed B. If we look at answer C, we know that's not the answer. A bug bounty, guys, is when your company or some sort of company will put out a bounty of sorts. Let's call this a reward. And it's to go and purposely search for bugs. So they might say, hey guys, we've got this website or we've got this program. Here is a bounty. We dare you to find a bug in this program. If any one of you guys can find a bug or a weakness or something in this program or this website of ours, we will pay you the following amount. So that obviously gets people to really test your environment security or its stability or whatever it might be, because they know there's money on the line. If they find nothing, then they get nothing. Should they find something, well, then they get the bounty, whoever found it, of course. So that's a great way to go and test your stability, your security for something in your company environment. And this is normally given to people inside the company first, but it's not that uncommon to have people outsource this as well. And then for the last one there, package monitoring. What the cheese is that? So guys, in cybersecurity, that involves continuously tracking, analyzing, and managing third-party software libraries and dependencies within an application's code base to identify vulnerabilities. It allows you to identify outdated versions. It allows you to identify compliance risks. So it is a proactive software supply chain risk management practice that often uses automated tools to ensure application security. So it's going to go and check, okay, you know what? Out of these third-party programs that we are using or dealing with, are there any of them that now suddenly need some sort of new dependencies now, which is going to pose a risk to us? Or, it's just in general, because we don't have full control over these third parties. They are their own man, if you will. So sometimes these third parties will go and change in such a way where suddenly they now need to go and access extra things they did not have to access in the past, or now they've got some sort of new dependency, and these sudden new changes could potentially pose a new risk to our company. That is what package monitoring is. It's to go and keep an eye, in a nutshell, on these third parties to see if any of their changes will affect us in some sort of negative way, security-wise. Anyway, nonetheless, let's move on to question 28 here. You have been tasked with deploying a server, but before you do, you need to perform server hardening. Now, if you don't know what hardening means, guys, it means to make something more secure. So if I say firewall hardening, it means I'm going to go make it more secure. I'm going to go and close ports that don't need to be open. I'm going to go and block websites that don't need to be allowed. That kinds of stuff. Server hardening is turning things off that don't need to be on. It is uninstalling things that don't need to be installed and just turning things off in general, blocking things in general. That is server hardening. So in a nutshell, it's making it more secure. Now that we know what hardening is, which of the following steps can you take? And you'll notice there I said choose two. I need or I want two answers from you guys. Is it answer A? Document the default passwords. Now, what good would that bring me in a sense of hardening? Nothing. So documenting the default passwords is a good thing, but generally we know what those are. So you should probably go and change those. And once you've changed them, you should maybe go and document those new passwords, and only your security team should have access to that. The answer is not A, guys. Definitely not one of the two answers. Answer B. Remove unnecessary services. Yes, so far that's a good answer, and since I set this up, I can tell you guys that is one of the two answers we're looking for. Servers, guys, often have a lot of services running on them, and a lot of these are unnecessary. We don't need them. So that creates a much larger attack surface. So if we don't need something to run, whether it be a service or a program or a whatever, we turn them off. We remove them. That means the hackers, or should I call them threat actors, will have a much smaller target to go and target now. So one of the two answers is B. Looking at answer C, join a server to the corporate domain. That is something you'll normally do in a company environment, but it's not necessarily going to do server hardening. So maybe via some long route, you'll be able to implement group policies and things like that. But it's not to say that those group policies will make it necessarily harder. It depends on what those group policies are. So no, joining it to the corporate domain will not make your server harder. Is it answer D? Add the server to an asset inventory. No. Yes, we do add servers to our asset inventory. We need to know in a company what our assets is. I need to know how many servers do I have? What is the specs of my servers? Where are my servers? The same goes for my client devices. The same goes for all my network devices, access points, routers and firewalls and what have you. I need to know exactly what I've got, what the specs of these assets are, and how many I've got and where they are and all that kind of stuff. But it does not involve hardening your server. So no, it's not answer D. Answer E. Disabling default accounts. Yes, folks, that is the second answer we're looking for. So servers, and actually quite frankly a lot of devices, come with default accounts. A lot of people, including yourselves, normally know what these default accounts are, and you will probably know what the default passwords are for these default accounts. If you, for example, look at something like a router or an access point or a firewall, what is the default account? Most of you guys probably know the default account is admin. What is the default password? Well, most of you guys probably know the default password is admin or admin1234 or it's blank. So considering that the average IT Joe knows what the default accounts are and what their passwords are, yeah, you might want to go and disable those default accounts and go and create your own account. So that is something we want to go and do on a server, folks. So the answers here is B and E, so we know what the answers are. Looking at answer F, ensuring nothing in the server is loose, like physically loose. What has that got to do with hardening? Hardening, guys, is a digital term. It means digitally making that server more secure. So when we say hardening, we're not talking about physically making it harder. No, that's not what we mean with hardening. It's a digital term. Anyway, folks, the answer is and remains B and E. Question 29. You have been called into an IT security meeting and a Chief Information Security Officer, which we call CISO for short, they mention in this meeting that they would like to conduct frequent, detailed reviews of systems and procedures to track compliance objectives. Alright, so now that we know what this person wants us to go and do, which of the following would be the best method to achieve this goal? Is it vulnerability scans? No, guys. Vulnerability scans are going to go and look for weaknesses in your company. It's going to go and check for legacy stuff, like we said earlier, 2-3 questions ago. It's going to go check if you're using outdated stuff, old stuff. Is your stuff weak and unsecure? It's going to go and check for stuff like that. But it's not necessarily a detailed review. It's not necessarily going to go and check your procedures. And it's not necessarily going to go and check your compliance. No, it's just going to go and check for, weaknesses in general. Penetration testing is also a bit extreme. That's when you go and hire a group of people. This could be insiders, it could be outsiders. They're going to go and specifically test your company's security. It's not going to go and check your compliance, though. They're not necessarily going to care about your procedures. So they might test your procedures, but they don't care about your procedures. They will specifically go and test your security. So I suppose you can call this a red team. The red team is an offensive team that is there to come and check your security. They're not really going to care about your compliance and things like that. Is it answer C? Internal auditing. Yes, folks, that is the answer. If you look at answer D, that is also an auditing of sorts. That's just going to be an outside party, where C is going to be an inside party. Considering that the chief wants us to go and conduct this regularly, They want detailed reviews of our systems and our procedures and to go and track compliance. That is something you probably want to go and check regularly because you want to make sure you adhere to that. So that when the third party eventually checks this to give you their stamp of approval, then you'll hopefully have everything in order. So generally we always have our own people do it first. They go and check for anything that might seem out of place. And if they do see anything out of place, we will go and do our best to go and fix that. And then once we're happy and we think we've covered and plugged all the holes, then you get the third party one. Ideally, you want to get your internal team to go and do this before the third party one. Anyway, folks, so internal auditing is going to be your answer here. Looking at question 30, you have been tasked to develop a disaster recovery plan. The requirements are costs must be kept to a minimum. And there is no money available to fund additional internet connections. Oh, wowza. Which of the following would be the best option considering the requirements? So we want a disaster recovery plan, but generally in most companies, guys, if you go look at the average company's disaster recovery plan, they normally want to be back up and running as quickly as possible. They want to be down as little as possible. That is called a hot failover or a hot site. It costs you an enormous amount of money, but the benefit is you're not going to be offline at all. Your stuff is going to be an instantaneous switch over in most cases. Whatever services you are rendering will for the most part not be unavailable. The users will for the most part be none the wiser that you have had a failure or that there is a failure. That is a hot site or a hot failover. A warm site or a warm failover is a bit slower. Slower means it's going to be cheaper. Now, a warm site or a warm failover means you've got a backup server or a backup something, but it might be turned off. It's for the most part pre-configured and pre-this and pre-that, but it's not plugged in or turned on, perhaps. You might need to go and turn it on, or you might need to go and plug it in, bring it back up. That could take a couple of minutes, maybe an hour or so to get this up and running. But you do have a plan at least. So warm is not going to be as expensive as a hot, but it's also not going to be as quick as a hot. So whether warm is for you or not depends on your budget, and it depends on whether you can afford to be offline or not. If we look at a cold site, guys, a cold site is even slower than a warm site. So hot is the quickest and the most expensive. Warm is slower, but cheaper. Cold is even slower than a warm backup. It is really, really slow when it comes to recovering your stuff. You'll get there. You will get there. But it's insanely, insanely slow. But it's also way cheaper. Unfortunately, with most cold sites or cold backups, never mind them being very slow, a lot of the infrastructure has not been built yet. So you might need to still go and configure stuff. You might need to still go and build stuff. You know, infrastructure-wise, there's still a lot of work there. So if you're not concerned about how long it takes to get there, then cold site might be the best bet here because it's stupid cheap. It doesn't really require a lot of money, but unfortunately, if you are pressed for time, then cold site is definitely not the way to go. If we look at the last one there, which I've not covered, failover site. That is when you've got a backup site, an off-site location, but it does require an internet connection, and you would see the question specifically said, no funds available or no money available for an additional internet connection. So that alone eliminates answer D. The fact that we do not have money available for an internet connection or any extra internet connections. An extra internet connection is what we would need to fail over to a second site somewhere else where we've got everything running and all of that. So the answer is going to be between A, B, and C. So let's look at the other requirements again. It says the requirements are costs must be kept to a minimum. All right. So that's all they mention. They don't mention that they need to be back up and running as quickly as possible, anything like that. None of that. So if we look at between cold, warm, and hot, which one is the cheapest? Cold would be the cheapest. It's not something we would normally go and choose in real life, but in this specific scenario, that is the answer. And I specifically want to test and check and see if you guys are paying attention here. So hopefully you guys are paying attention. Anyway, let's move on to question 31, guys. You are the administrator at a company called BurningIceTech. Little self-promo there again. You have recently noticed an increase in support tickets from users complaining they received a block page message after trying to navigate to a spoofed website. Which of the following should you do? Should you go and decrease the level of web filtering settings? No guys, that's going to make it even worse. Web filters are there to block certain sites. This could be for good reasons, could be for bad reasons, but most of the time if a company blocks websites, it's either because they don't want you to go on there for social media purposes, because you're supposed to be working, not playing around and fooling around. Other websites that companies normally block is harmful websites, like phishing websites and illegal pirate websites, things like that. So by decreasing my web filter settings, that's going to make matters even worse. There'll be even more spoofed websites coming through, and we're going to receive even more tickets like this one. We're literally going to make matters worse by choosing answer A. If we look at answer B, update the acceptable use policy. No guys, that's not related to this question. So the AUP policy, which is what we call this policy for short, basically specifies what your users can go and use a certain resource for. This resource could be the company internet. It can be an asset like a company laptop or phone perhaps. So if it's the internet, it'll specify what they're allowed to use the company internet for and what not. If it is an asset like a laptop, the policy might say you're only allowed to use this for work and not for personal stuff. Things like that. Now considering that they said the person went to a spoofed website, for all we know, this was a company website that's being spoofed, not necessarily a social media website or some sort of other personal thing. No. So updating the acceptable usage policy, guys, is a bit unrelated in this specific instance. It's not A, it's not B. Looking at answer C, implementing security awareness training. Yes, folks, that is the answer here. So clearly we've got a situation here where users don't know what a phishing website or a spoofed website or any of these things are. So you need to go and educate them. It does not have to be a fancy training like this one. No, you can honestly invite them into the boardroom, maybe in lunchtime. Say, hey guys, bring your lunch, bring your drinks. I want to show you guys a quick 5 or 10 minute presentation. I just want to show you the basics of the basics. And you tell them, hey guys, if you receive a link in the mail from a well-known entity like the bank that says click on this link, don't click on it. If they give you an attachment, don't open the attachment. And well-known entities, well actually most entities, will not ask you for your username and password and an email address. So it's basic stuff that you're going to go and train them on. Now we know, deep on our hearts, we know they are still going to go and do this stuff. So we're not trying to stop them from doing this stupid stuff. We are just trying to minimize it. I can guarantee you one of these sheep are still going to go and click on that link even though you told them not to go and do it. This is why companies will actually go and do tests. It's not part of this question, but what they will do is after training the staff, they will purposely go and conduct a test where they'll send them a fake email. It looks just like a real email. It'll go and have something very tempting to go and click on. It might say, hey, salaries of people. Maybe make it look like you accidentally sent the salaries of somebody or something like that. Maybe make it look like you accidentally sent the salary slip of someone to the wrong person. They're going to be curious and they're going to go and click on that attachment or that link and boopity bop, they would have failed the test. So you tell them, don't click on stuff like that. And I can guarantee you somebody is still going to go and do it. But you can go and conduct tests like that to see if they actually listened. The last answer there, we know that's not the answer. It says deploy multi-factor authentication. Granted, that is something you should go and do in your company, but it's not going to solve this particular problem. A spoofed website is a spoofed website. It's a website that looks like the real website, but it's not a real website. Multi-factor authentication is not going to stop someone from opening a spoofed website. At the end of the day, that is to stop me from getting into your account because it's going to ask me to prove my identity in more than one factor, more than one category. But it's unrelated to spoof websites. Question 32. You have to determine whether a company has systems that can be exploited by a potential unidentified vulnerability. You have been added to a team to achieve this goal. Which type of team are you a part of considering your goals? See here we've got those different kinds of teams again that we spoke of earlier in this video. So if you guys remember, we had many kinds of teams, not just 4 different colors. See here we've once again got white, purple, red and blue. I'm trying to remember what other colors we heard earlier in this video, but it was not white. White is a new one I added for you guys here. I think in the previous question I added yellow for you guys if I'm not mistaken, but there's quite a few. Each of them serves a specific purpose. And if we look at the goal here, we need to go and identify vulnerabilities and things like that. What kind of team would that be, guys? That would be the blue team. The red team and the blue team are probably two of the most famous teams we get. So the red team is more offensive than anything else. They will literally go and try and hack your company to test its security, do penetration testing and all of that. The blue team is more of a defensive kind of team, identifying vulnerabilities, things like that. The purple team is normally a mix of the red and the blue team. And the white team, folks, is for management, compliance, analysts, logistics, and that kind of stuff. Blue team, like I said, that's for defensive security, identifying vulnerabilities, that kind of stuff. Red team is for offensive security. And the purple team, which is a mix between blue and red normally, this one integrates defensive tactics with offensive results. And just a very quick reminder what the other colors was. So the colors that's missing here, guys, is green, yellow, and orange. Green, just once again, enhances security automation with code and design. If you look at the yellow team, that one, guys, I said is for software coders and architects. And the orange team, which we have not listed yet, that one facilitates interaction and education. Question 33. A mobile device was recently stolen in your company. The threat actor, technical name we use for hackers, they were able to use the password and the username to log into that device. Now that is interesting. You need to implement the best solution to increase mobile data security on all employees' company mobile devices. Which of the following will achieve this? Alright, folks, is it answer A, application management? No, not so much. Application management, folks, is something we normally do with an MDM, which is short for mobile device management. An example of this would be something like Microsoft Intune. Normally it entails that we have to go and enroll these devices first into your mobile device management platform. Once you've enrolled these devices, you can go and do deployment, management, and you can to a certain degree go and secure these devices. But like I said, you normally need to enroll these devices. It is possible to go and control devices to a certain extent, well, pretty much just the applications if they're not enrolled, but that would normally require things like app protection policies, and unfortunately, that only works on Android and iOS. This is not a topic here right now, though. So when it comes to protecting everybody's data on all their mobile devices, no, application management is not really the way to go. Is it answer B, full disk encryption? Yes, guys, that is the best option here. If you look at the other options that's available there, encryption is pretty much always going to be for the win here. So now, if somebody's device were to get stolen, obviously we're not going to get that device back. I mean, probably not. But at least we can sleep at night knowing that the data that might be on that device is not going to land in the wrong hands. It has been encrypted. So yes, we don't get the device back, but the enemy or this thief will at least not get our data as well. If we look at answer C, we know the answer is B now. Remote wipe. The remote wipe is not a bad thing to go and implement on your devices. So if they do get misplaced, you can maybe go and execute remote wipe, assuming they're still turned on and on some sort of network, Wi-Fi network or mobile network. They do need to be on some sort of network to be able to receive the instruction that says remote wipe. Just FYI. That's why it's not a very viable option for stolen devices, because what is the first thing a criminal does when they steal your device? They turn it off. And if that device is off, and if it does not have some sort of SIM card in it, and if it's not on some sort of network of any kind, then how do you think it's going to receive that instruction that says, hey, wipe yourself? It's not going to work. So it works to a certain extent for misplaced devices, provided the device has not run out of battery yet, and it's still on some sort of network. It also works for devices which belong to employees where the employees might have left the company. So in other words, BYOD devices. Employees were using their own devices for the purposes of work. They've left the company, and now the company feels that employee might have too much sensitive information on that device of theirs. The company can then go and execute what we call a remote wipe if needed. So it works for that. If we look at answer D, containerization, that is kind of sort of a form of virtualization, guys. So you folks probably know what normal virtualization is, things like virtual machines, things like that. Containerization, very much the same thing. It's normally something we do more on the laptop, desktop, server side of things. I suppose you can do it on phones as well. It's an isolated environment and all that, It serves other purposes, but it's not going to serve our purpose here today. The answer is and remains B, folks. Question 54. One of the users in your company recently downloaded software from a torrent website. After the user installed the software, you observed external network traffic connecting to the user's computer on an uncommon port. That's not good. Which of the following is the most likely explanation of this unauthorized connection? Do you guys think it's A, ransomware? No, guys. Ransomware's got very distinct symptoms. Normally, ransomware will go and encrypt everything on the machine. So on the target machine, or machines, if it's more than one, it's going to encrypt everything. There's normally going to be some sort of prompt on a screen. They'll give you a deadline. It'll tell the user that they've got 24 hours, 48 hours, or 72 hours to pay the ransom. Normally, the ransom has to be paid in cryptocurrency, something like Bitcoin. Failing to do so will result in them deleting all the data. So, nowhere here in this question do I mention that your data is going to be deleted, that data has been encrypted, that there's a timer, that they're demanding a ransom. Nowhere did I mention that. So, the answer is not A, folks. Is it B? The user's computer had a fileless virus. First thing you need to pay attention to there, guys, is past tense. Had. Not has. Had. So what? Did it now just magically disappear? No, it's not just going to magically disappear unless you've got a proper antivirus that's taken care of it for you, or unless you or somebody has taken care of it. So the first thing that's wrong with answer B there, guys, is I put that in past tense to see if you guys are paying attention. So the virus is not there anymore, and this is not a fileless virus. This seems to be some sort of spyware or some form of remote connection where they are spying or just intruding on your system. It's not answer B. Is it answer C? The software had a hidden keylogger. Could be, but once again, C is in past tense. So did the keylogger just disappear now? It's plausible. Maybe they've gotten what they needed to get, and now they just decided to have this thing delete itself. Maybe that was built into the keylogger. We don't know. But the question, if you look at the question, the way it's phrased makes it seem like this is still an ongoing thing. There is still unauthorized network traffic connecting to that PC via an uncommon port. Now the keylogger, if you look at answer C, that's past tense. So it would have been there, but now it's gone. But if it's gone, then this traffic should have stopped, should it not? So it is plausible to be C, but it's past tense, things like that. So if you look at answer D, the software contained a backdoor. Now that is also plausible. So it'll be between C and D. D is plausible because it could still be there. You do get some softwares out there, guys, that contains a backdoor, and ultimately what that would allow is maybe for some threat actor to gain remote access to your machine, or for this machine to go and submit information to some sort of remote threat actor. You don't know. So backdoors are bad, guys. We really, really don't want that. So if you see unauthorized traffic, happening like that on an uncommon port, it's either some sort of spyware, potentially like that keylogger, or someone or something is remote connecting to your environment, your machine, or your server. And yeah, can you imagine? That is a scary thought, eh? Anyway, folks, the answer here is D. Question 55, boys and girls. Your company recently had a Cybersecurity Awareness Day. Those are always good to have. A presentation was done on cyber hygiene. Yes, that's a thing. And one of the topics covered was best practices for printing centers. So this is a location in a company where they would go and print everybody's documents. That's generally what it is. Which of the following describes an attack that relates to printing centers? Is it A, folks, credential harvesting? No. Credential harvesting would probably be something like a phishing website as an example. That's just an example, guys. It does extend beyond that. So I've got something in place, something like a phishing website, and its purpose is to go and harvest people's login details, for example. That could be an example of credential harvesting. Now, at a printing center, credential harvesting is quite tricky to go and do that. So no, it's not A. Is it B? Quishing. Quishing, guys, is a form of phishing, a subcategory of phishing, but it's specifically done via QR codes. Now, QR codes is not exactly something we're going to be doing at printing centers now, is it? So, quishing is where I'm going to try and trick you or the user to go and scan a QR code. It may or may not, once again, take you to a phishing website. Wow, using that example twice now. So, it's not A, it's not B. Is it answer C? Dumpster diving. Yes, folks. Now, for those of you that don't know what dumpster diving is, believe it or not, it actually falls under the category of social engineering, which, it makes sense, but it does not. It involves someone going through your trash, not necessarily an actual dumpster per se, they're just going through your trash. It could honestly be a bin by the printer, a bin underneath your desk. They're going through your trash in the hopes of getting something sensitive, something of value. Maybe there's a sticky note or a piece of paper that's got a password written on it, a credit card number written on it, or something else of value. Other times, they might not directly find something of value, but it doesn't mean they come out empty-handed. They can often find other pieces of information that they can go and later use in a different attack. So maybe there's a piece of paper on it that's got your name and last name on it. It may or may not have your passport number or ID number or social security number on it. Maybe it's got your email address, your residential address, things like that on it. Now, directly, it might not immediately have an effect on you, but they can later contact you and say, hey, are you Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so and so? And then they will mention your own details back to you. And this is going to seem obviously a lot more believable now if they mention stuff to you over the phone, which the average person would not know. If they, for example, mention where you live, where you work, and they want to just confirm your residential address and your work address and things like that, that immediately makes this phone call seem more legit. So after they've confirmed this, if they start asking you questions, you'll be a lot more inclined to actually give them what they're looking for because it seems, it feels, it sounds more believable. Now that is the answer here, guys, because at printing centers, what do people do? They print. And very often you'll find folks will go and throw stuff in the bins by the printer. Maybe it's something that did not print properly, it printed skew, or it was the wrong information. You know, the point is, people can always go and dig in those bins and they can see stuff they're not supposed to go and see. So the answer is C. Looking at answer D, whaling. That is when I go and try and attack people in your company, but specifically high-rank individuals. So I wouldn't say it's a specific individual in your company per se, but it is high-rank individuals. So this might be the CEO, CFO, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's what whaling is. Nowhere here in this question did I mention someone specific was being targeted or the high-rank individuals was being targeted. We're talking about best practices at printing centers. So whaling has got absolutely nothing to do with that. The answer is and remains C, folks. Question 56. You're part of a digital forensic team. Oh, wow. Your team has been tasked with collecting evidence from a machine. Oh, wow, it gets even cooler. Which of the following is considered the most volatile and should have the contents collected first? So guys, if you look at the answers that's available there, the ones I've given you, obviously we're talking about memory. So I'm actually asking you guys in an indirect way, which of the following is the most volatile form of memory? Now, if any of you guys have done A+, and even to a certain degree N+, you would know that something like RAM is an example of volatile memory. And you would know something like a hard drive is an example of non-volatile memory. What does volatile mean in terms of memory? Well, if something like power is lost, whatever is in the memory would be lost. So if you look at something like a computer, imagine you've got a computer, it's turned on, you've got a whole bunch of programs and documents and stuff open. Now if I yank out the power cord out of that PC, let's say it's a desktop PC, the documents and files that was saved on that PC, is it now gone? No, they're still on a hard drive. You just need to start the PC back up again and double click on the files to open them up again. So it's not gone. So anything on a hard drive is not gone. That means the hard drive is non-volatile. But whatever you had open at that point in time on that machine, when the power was yanked out, those files and documents would now be closed. They're not gone, but they're closed. So anything that was open would have been in the RAM. And unfortunately, when you yank your power out, Anything that's in the RAM is lost. The RAM is an example of volatile memory. So when you start that PC back up again, you're going to have to go and double click on that program or that file or that document to load it from the hard drive back into the RAM. Now looking at the answers available there, if we look at answer A, guys, SSD, which is short for solid state drive, that's an example of a hard drive. And as I've just said, hard drives are non-volatile, period. So A is already ruled out completely because we want to know which one is the most volatile here. Hard drives are not even volatile. Is it answer B? RAM. Yes, so far that is the answer, guys, because RAM, I specifically said, is an example of volatile memory. But before we go and say RAM, let's just go and double check what the other answers are because you never know, there might be something that's more volatile. Is it answer C? A hard drive? No, a hard drive, well, I just said hard drives are non-volatile. SSD, being answer A, is an example of a hard drive. And if we look at answer C, that could be an SSD or it could be a mechanical drive, but normally these days, if we just refer to a hard drive, we're probably referring to the old school mechanical hard drives. Either way, non-volatile. So A is not volatile, C is not volatile, B is the only one that's volatile here so far. Looking at answer D, temporary files on that computer. Now, yes, it might be temporary, but you know, they're not necessarily going to disappear if you turn the PC off. Sometimes they'll stay in your temporary files folder for an X amount of time. RAM is the most volatile. So as soon as you turn that PC off, or as soon as power is lost to that PC, anything in the RAM would be lost. Unlike temporary files, where if you turn the PC off, the temporary files might still be there if you turn it back on. It might just be there for 2 or 3 days or so, but it might still be there. Where RAM, you need to make sure you back that up first, or you collect evidence from the RAM first, because as soon as that PC turns off, anything that's in the RAM, any evidence that might be in the RAM, would be lost. So B is and remains the answer, folks. Question 57. You're the manager of an IT team. One of the junior members of your team needs to secure company data on corporate laptops in case the laptops are stolen. Now, doesn't that sound similar to another question we had just a couple of questions ago where we talked about mobile devices? So which of the following should your team member consider? Should we consider boot security? Well, guys, boot security is more for, you know, your BIOS, your UEFI. This is to prevent people from going into the BIOS or the UEFI to go and change, for example, your starting order and to go and format your hard drive and, you know, things like that. But it's not going to keep people from just, you know, getting into the PC. So, no, A is not your best option here. Is it B? Data loss prevention. So, guys, this normally refers to policies that we can go and implement in companies. This is especially something we do with Microsoft 365. So, for any of you guys that might be using Microsoft 365 in your environment, data loss prevention policies is a great thing to go and use. It scans for what we call sensitive info types. Now, for quite a while there, Microsoft said there's only about 80 plus sensitive info types it can scan for. This will be things like personal names, you know, first name, last name. It'll be things like your ID number or social security number, depending on the country you're from. Passport number, cell phone number, email address. Basically anything sensitive. Anything that falls under the umbrella of PII, personally identifiable information. It's able to scan for that. Now, the last time I checked, it was 327 sensitive info types that it scans for, and it would not surprise me if it's more by the time you guys watch this. It's astonishing. It works with what we call conditions, and it works with what we call actions. As soon as a condition is met, an action will kick in. So if someone tries to share something not supposed to, like a credit card number, it's going to pick it up, and it's going to go and execute whatever action you've specified. So that's for sharing information here, whether it be accidental or malicious, but it's not really something we do with lost or stolen laptops. It's not applicable for that. So it's not A, it's not B. Is it answer C, disk encryption? Yes, folks, you would remember of the mobile devices, it was also full disk encryption. So it's more specifically full disk encryption. Considering we're talking about laptops here, if it's Windows, it'll probably be something like BitLocker as an example. If they're running Apple, it'll probably be something called Vault or File Vault. I think on Apple it's called Vault or File Vault. I'm striking a bit of a blank here, but you get the idea. The point here is it encrypts the full hard drive, the full volume of that machine. So should this machine land in the wrong hands, let's say it gets stolen like the question says, yeah, they'll get the machine, but they won't get their hands on the data. It's encrypted. So the answer is C. Looking at answer D, operating system hardening. That means we're making the operating system more secure, but it's not going to help in a sense of if somebody steals this machine. So operating system hardening is more to make it digitally more secure. So if someone is trying to hack into your machine, or if some malware is trying to mess with your machine, so that'll involve closing things like ports that don't need to be open, turning services off that don't need to be on, uninstalling things that don't need to be installed, that kinds of stuff. Anyway, folks, the answer is and remains C. Question 38. You work for a company called BurningIceTech. There I go again of the self-promo. Love it. Your company wants you to implement multi-factor authentication with smart cards. Which of the following can be used as an additional factor? In case you guys don't remember, multi-factor authentication means you need to prove your identity in more than one category, or should I say more than one factor. There's many factors. The three most common ones is something you know, like a password, a PIN, or a phrase. A second common one is something that you have or possess, like a bank card, smart card, thumb fob, or even your phone, because the phone receives a one-time PIN, or there's an app acknowledgement you've got to go and do. A third very common category is biometrics, fingerprint scan, retina eye scan, facial recognition, voice recognition, and then of course you get a couple of other categories as well. Now, if we look at the options we have down below, we need to make sure whatever we choose is in a different category than smart cards. So a smart card is something we physically possess. So it needs to be something other than something physically that we possess. Otherwise, it's still single factor. But you also need to keep in mind, guys, it needs to be something that would generally go with smart cards. So if we look at answer A, a hardware token, no, that's something that you would physically possess. A smart card is something you physically possess. So A is still in the same category if you think about it. So it kind of rules that out. And also, hardware tokens is not really something we combine with smart cards normally. If you look at answer B, a PIN. Yes, guys, a PIN is something you know. A smart card is something you possess. So that would make it indeed multi-factor authentication, and PINs do very often get used with smart cards. So that is indeed the answer here. If we look at answer C, SMS, that is going to be received on something you possess, something you have. That is going to be received on something you possess, something you have, like a phone. So this could be something like an OTP. But if you think about it, the smart card is also something you have. So if the SMS is something you have, on a phone, and the smart card is something you have, that would make it the same category, same factor. So that's single factor, not multi-factor. Plus, we don't normally use SMSs of smart cards. I mean, when have you ever heard somebody do that? So it's not C. Looking at answer D, the user ID. I mean, that's like the username. It's a little irrelevant, don't you think? So if they said password, then we could maybe go and argue here. But it's the user ID. So no. The answer is B, folks. Question 39. You've been tasked to implement physical security measures that can both detect and deter. From the list below, choose 2 that can achieve this. So I'm going to give you guys a bit of a longer list, because if I only give you 4 answers, that's going to make this way too easy if I ask you guys to go and choose 2. So I'm purposely giving you guys a longer list. I'm adding 7. I actually wanted to add more here if I had more space, but yeah, then the font would be so small you won't be able to see anything. So when it comes to physical security measures that will not just detect but also deter, which ones would achieve that goal? Is it answer A, a bollard? Now guys, that is physical security, but it does not detect. It only deters. A bollard is something you maybe go and put in certain places where you don't want cars to go and drive or to go and park. It's predominantly used for vehicles, if I'm being honest. You'll find these in parking lots or near objects that are of value, like a generator. You'll maybe put them next to the generator so that people can't go and drive accidentally into the generator or maliciously into the company's generator. So they deter, but they don't detect. So it's not A. Is it a lock? A lock might deter, because if you see something is physically locked, it'll deter you from doing something, but it does not detect. Now, does it? so it's not B. Is it answer C, a sensor? Yes, sensors, whatever sensor you have, this could be a motion sensor even, for example, these are often hooked up to alarms. So a sensor would detect, so it does cover that. But it will also deter, because in most cases, if you go and check, if a criminal sees there are sensors, they will normally see these, they are not going to go and do whatever it is they want to go and do, because they know the alarm's going to go off. If I, for example, were to go and break in somewhere, if I know or see their sensors, I'm not going to go and do it, because I know the sensors will detect me, and the fact that I can see them deters me from doing whatever shenanigans I was about to go and do. So C is one of the two answers we're looking for, folks. D, fencing. Fences will deter, but it's not going to detect. How is this going to detect? Unless you've got an alarm or a sensor built into it, which has not been mentioned here in my answers, it's not going to detect, guys. It will just deter. A normal fence will just deter. If you look at answer E, lighting. Yes, guys, that's the second answer here. Lighting will obviously go and illuminate. It will go and light up dark areas, allowing you or somebody like security people to physically see criminals or whatever people are up to shenanigans. But once again, if there's lighting, it will deter people as well. People like to go and commit shenanigans in the dark. But if the whole area has been lit up like a Christmas tree, then you might think twice, because now you know you're going to be spotted. It deters. So C and E is the two answers we're looking for. Looking at answer F, guys, just ignore F. I can see I made a boo-boo there. So between D and F, for some reason I thought I didn't add it, and I just went and added it again. So please ignore F in this instance, because we already covered F. We know it's not fencing. That's the problem when you're trying to suck things out of your thumb, you know. So I was trying to suck things out of my thumb here, and I ran out of things, and then somehow I ended up putting the same thing twice. So it's not F. G, signage. Now, signage might deter. You know, if I put a sign up that says, please don't come and trespass, or please don't do this, please don't do that, you know. It might deter, but a sign is not going to detect, guys. So it's not a sign either. I actually could have added another one here now that I think about it, because the fact that I put fence there, and fence does not need to be there, well, the second fence, I could have added another one in there. But, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, guys, you get the idea. The whole point of this test, or this fake test of mine, is for you guys to get an idea as to more or less what you're getting yourselves into. And I think I achieved that goal pretty well here. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below and let me know whether you're enjoying this or not. I really do appreciate it. And maybe give the video a like. Guys, the like goes a long way. I'm doing this for free after all. So yeah, I mean, maybe give it a like. Think of that as payment. And then just a reminder, if you want more practical based questions, guys, that is in my Patreon. Go check my Patreon out. The link is in the video's description down below. There you'll find more practical based questions if you're looking for those as well. Question 40. You have been hired as a security analyst at BurningIceTech. After being hired, you have noticed several user logins from outside the organization's network. You have determined that these logins were not performed by individuals within the BurningIceTech organization. Which of the following recommendations would reduce the likelihood of future attacks? Now, guys, I've got 6 for you guys to go and choose from, and I want 2 answers, as you guys can see there. So is it A, more regular account audits? Now, account audits, they would detect, you know, irregularities, but it's always going to detect it after the fact, if you guys know what I'm saying. So we want to go and reduce the likelihood of future attacks. Now, if you're going to go and do audits, yes, you'll always detect them afterwards, but it's always going to be afterwards. It's not going to stop me. If I am that threat actor hacking your company, and I know you're only going to detect me after I've done the shenanigans, then I'm still going to go and do it. So, account audits is something you should go and do. I'm not saying you should not go and do it, but it's not going to go and prevent people from attacking you. So, yeah, it's not A. B, conditional access policies. Yes, folks, that's one of the 2 answers I'm looking for. Conditional access policies is something a lot of companies, if not most companies, are using these days. If you look at the fact that half of employees, if not more, are working remotely these days, this is definitely something we need. Considering that people are working remotely, a lot of these people are using their own devices. These devices are not necessarily laptops or desktops. They're not necessarily Windows, and they're definitely not necessarily secure, these devices. So that obviously brings about a lot of stress for us IT administrators. The last thing I want is for one of my users to come and connect to my company resources with their own device which is infected with malware. That's absolutely the last thing I want. So what I can now go and do is, with conditional access policies, I can go and specify conditions that needs to be met first before these users will be granted access to company resources. One of the places you can go and specify this, just FYI in case you guys are curious, is on Azure. On the Microsoft Azure portal, it's under the Active Directory, which used to be called Azure Active Directory. Now it's called Entra ID. So if you go specifically to your security section there, that is where you'll find your conditional access policies. So there I can specify conditions like you've got to be in a certain location, geographically speaking. This can either be based on public IP address, or it can be based on GPS coordinates. So locations companies will often specify is literally the office. So if you take a company PC home, and even if you've got the login details, it's not going to help you one bit because it's a new location. You need to be at the office. Or maybe you get lucky. Maybe they'll specify your home address. But if you go anywhere else besides your home address, it's not going to allow you to log in. Other conditions I can go and specify is you need to use a Windows device, or it needs to be an Apple or an Android device or whatever device. For whatever reason I have. I can go and specify you need to have a strong password. I can go and specify that it needs to have certain complexity requirements. I can go and say, you know what, your device needs to have BitLocker encryption. It needs to have MFA. You see what I'm getting at? So I can go and specify all of these conditions, and if you don't meet all of them, then you will not be granted access to company resources. And if you can't access the resources, then you won't be able to do your work, and I'm going to catch you out either way. So yes, B is definitely one of the two answers I'm looking for here, guys. So if you look at unauthorized or unusual logins, which are probably people that are not supposed to be logging in, conditional access is going to stop those perpetrators dead in their tracks. If we look at answer C, enforcement of content filtering policies. No. Yes, you should go and enforce those policies, but it's not applicable to the scenario we're looking at here right now, guys. Content filtering is more for things like websites that people are visiting. We are talking about weird logins to my organization. So content filtering is not going to go and stop that. It's going to help prevent people from going to phishing websites and websites that's got nothing to do with work. Yes, it'll help with those kinds of stuff, but it's not going to prevent people from trying to log into my company. No, so it's not C. Answer D, a review of user account permissions. Also something you should go and do in a company, but also not related to the scenario we're facing here right now, guys. We are trying to prevent people from logging in that's not supposed to, period. But reviewing permissions is not going to do that. If we look at answer E, disciplinary action for users. Also something you should have. Everything we see on this list here, guys, is stuff we should have in a company. It is stuff we should do in a company. The question is, which ones are related to the immediate issue we're facing here? So disciplinary action, guys, how will that have any effect on people logging in from outside that's not supposed to? It will not. People logging into your company that's not supposed to don't work for you. So the last thing they're going to be concerned about is some disciplinary action. So they're not going to be concerned about that, guys. Disciplinary action works great for people inside your company that actually work for you. And that is if you actually catch them. But if they don't work for you, they're not going to care about your disciplinary action, are they? So the only answer that remains here, by process of elimination, is F. And yes, F is the second answer we're looking for, guys. Implementation of additional authentication factors. So remember, we had people logging in that was not supposed to be logging in. So they would maybe compromise someone's account, things like that. So if you've got to now prove in more than one way or in extra ways that you are the owner to that account, that will not necessarily stop the perpetrators, but it'll darn gosh make it a heck of a lot harder for them to go and compromise those login details. So maybe they only had usernames and passwords, but now it might also ask you for an app. You know, maybe there's a Microsoft app and you've got to go and acknowledge on the app that you also are this person. So it's going to drastically make it a lot harder to compromise these accounts. Anyway, folks, so the answer here is B and F. Those are the two answers I'm looking for. Question 41. You have been tasked by your IT manager to create a point-in-time backup of a virtual machine. Which of the following should you use? So it's a backup, but it's of a specific point in time, and it's specifically of a virtual machine. Is it A, containerization? No, guys. Containerization is a certain form of virtualization, but we don't exactly use that for virtual machines. So you can use that, on desktops and laptops and servers and stuff. It could act and look and behave like a real computer. We can also use this for applications, but it's got nothing to do with making backups. No, it's a certain form of virtualization. Is the answer B, system restore? Now, system restore could be seen as a backup of sorts, but first of all, system restore only works on client operating systems, and system restore is not for virtual machines. So it'll only work on the operating system. It's not meant for backing up virtual machines. It's meant for backing up operating systems. And also only to a certain extent, I might add. It's only going to back up your system settings and changes and stuff. It's like a time machine for your computer, but specifically for client computers and specifically only for the operating system. It does not affect your data. So you need to make sure it's turned on. Lucky for us, it normally is turned on by default. And should you go and use this, it's going to send that PC back in time to an earlier checkpoint. Sometimes we call those snapshots, but it's normally referred to as a checkpoint of system restore. And it's only going to change your system back. So anything you recently installed will be uninstalled. Anything you recently uninstalled will be installed. Any system change you made recently will be changed back to what it was at that point in time when the system restore point was made. You can either go and make these system restore points manually. Some of them take place automatically. When you're about to go and do some serious system change, they will actually sometimes take place automatically. Quite cool. So it's not A, it's not B. Answer C, snapshot. Yes, folks, that is the answer. So if you look at virtual machines, I think a good example will probably be Hyper-V. You can go make what we call a snapshot. Funny enough, it's also called a checkpoint. Now, when we call it a checkpoint with virtual machines, it's not the same as a checkpoint of system restore. They just happen to have the same name. So virtual machines, especially if you look at something like Microsoft's Hyper-V, they used to be called snapshots, but now we call them checkpoints. It's the same thing, guys. Potato, potato. So it's going to go and take a snapshot of that virtual machine at how it is in that point in time. It takes up an enormous amount of space, by the way. And now you can go and carry on using that virtual machine. And if you do anything on that virtual machine or anything happens, let's say you get a malware infection or somebody does something stupid, whatever. If anything happens, you can literally send that whole machine back in time. You can go and use a snapshot of how it was at an earlier point in time. So if I take a snapshot of that virtual machine right now, this moment, I'm going to store that snapshot on a server. It takes up a huge amount of space, mind you, like I said. And now in 2 days from now, if something happens, I can literally go and resort to using the snapshot. Put that virtual machine how it was 2 days ago, back in time. How cool is that? Looking at answer D, we know the answer is C now, of course. Replication. That is something you can go and do on virtual machines. You can also do that on physical machines. It makes an exact replica, but it's not a backup. Replication is often a real-time replication. It's replicating real-time somewhere. It's like a mirrored image. So it could be a backup, but it might also not be a backup. It's more of a clone happening somewhere else, real time. So if I want to go back, let's say, to last week on how this virtual machine was, my replication is not necessarily going to help with me with that because it's going to go and replicate how my virtual machine is right now. It's just going to keep replicating. So if my machine fails right now, then yes, I can probably go and use the replication one because it's an exact clone of how my machine is right now. But if I have a machine and I have an oopsie on it and I realize, oh, oops, I need to go back to how it was last week, then the replication is not going to help. The replication is how my machine is exactly right now at this point in time. That's what the replication is. Right, folks, moving you guys along to question 42. You have noticed multiple unused, non-compliant desktops are connected to the network. That's not good. Which of the following actions would you most likely recommend to the management team? Now remember, these machines are not being used. They're just lying around there in the office. They're non-compliant and they're non-used. Can you go and do patching on them? Well, if they were non-compliant, we could maybe say, patching. Let's go and get them compliant by patching them and updating them. But they're not being used, so what's the point? So A is plausible, but it doesn't seem, I would say, what's the point? If you look at answer B, decommissioning. Yes, that's already a better answer than A. So far B is better than A because these machines are not being used. They're just a risk at this point in time. So why not decommission them completely? Then we don't have the risk of someone plugging them in and using them for whatever nonsense. If we look at C, isolating. You can go and isolate them, but that doesn't solve my problem. One day is one day and someone's still going to go and plug them in. So, not a bad answer, but B is still the better answer. D, monitoring. What do you want to monitor about these machines? So, you're just going to put your company at risk. So, it is possible you can go and monitor them, but you're putting your company at risk by using non-compliant machines. They're not being used. So, why do I want to go and plug these machines in? It doesn't make any sense. Why would I want to monitor these machines? They're not being used, so you're not going to monitor them. And if they are being used, they're non-compliant. So it's not a good idea in any way, in any sense. The only answer that's viable here, guys, is B. Since they're not being used, decommission them. Then there's no risk of someone accidentally plugging these little buggers in. Question 43. You have to use a data removal method in your company that will remove sensitive data from hard drives in a repeatable manner, but allow the hard drives to be reused. Which of the following methods will allow you to achieve this? Now, folks, there's many ways you can go and dispose of hard drives, but some of them involve physically destroying the hard drive, for audit reasons and all that. That's normally for a failed hard drive. Some methods allow you to go and destroy the hard drive data, but you can reuse the data after that. So maybe you plan on selling a PC that happens to have a hard drive in it, which happens to have some sensitive data on it. Now, what some companies will go and do is, because they're paranoid, they'll just go and remove the hard drive outright. They'll just go and remove it. Then there's no risk of somebody getting a hold of sensitive data. They can buy the PC second hand, or you can go give it to them second hand, but they'll have to go and acquire their own hard drive after. Some companies will go and do that. It's not the question here, though. So is it answer A, defragmentation? No, guys. Defragmentation is something you go and do on a hard drive to go and organize it. As time goes by, this is more applicable to old mechanical hard drives, the hard drives become fragmented, unorganized. And if they're unorganized, it gets slow and non-responsive. So by defragmenting it, you are organizing it, so that when it looks for files and documents and stuff, it's going to find it faster. It's going to make the PC perform better. Now, this happens automatically. So since Windows 10, this actually happens automatically once a week or once every 2 weeks or so. So it's something you don't even have to go and do, mind you. And it's completely unrelated to this question. The question talks about removing sensitive data. Defragmentation does not remove data in any way or in any sense. It just reorganizes it to make your PC faster and smoother. So it's definitely not A. Is it B, sanitization? Yes, folks, that is the answer here. To sanitize a hard drive means you can go and reuse it. So it's going to remove all the sensitive data, but it will also do it in such a way that you can keep doing it over and over and over again one day. So in a month from now, if I need to go and do it again, I can. If next year I need to do it again, I can. The hard drive will still be reusable. And if anybody tries to recover the old data on that hard drive, it's not going to be recoverable. You go and use these special overwriting programs, and they will go and basically make the data non-recoverable. So if anybody is clever enough to go and try and recover the hard drive data, it's not going to work. If you look at answer C, formatting. Some of you guys might have thought it was that, depending on your experience in IT. So it might appear blank, the hard drive, and yes, you will be able to go and reuse the hard drive. So it does tick that box, you will be able to reuse the hard drive. But it does not actually remove the sensitive data. It just deletes the reference. In reality, all the data is still exactly where it was, and all the data can still be recovered. Think of it this way, guys. Imagine you are in a classroom with me. Imagine I've got a whiteboard in front of all of you guys. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you guys, please stay in the class. I'm going to walk out of the class with a bag of sweets. And I'm going to go and hide those sweets all over the building. And then after a couple of minutes, I come back into the classroom with an empty bag of sweets. Then I draw you a map on that whiteboard of the building's layout. Basically a blueprint. And on that map, I indicate with little X's where I have hidden all the sweets. So think of that map as your reference. Treasure map, if you will, but let's think of this as a reference. It shows you where what is. It shows you where the sweets are. Now, the sweets in this analogy, guys, is your data on your hard drive. Now, if I were to go and erase that map after that on my whiteboard, does that mean the sweets are gone in the building? No, they're not. If you leave that class, and I tell you guys, let's go treasure hunting, let's go find these sweets. If you leave that classroom without a map, the sweets are still exactly where they were. None of them are gone. They are still exactly where they were. I've just removed your reference as to where they were. If you look hard enough and long enough, you'll find those sweets. It might take you longer because you don't have your reference anymore, but they're still there. Now, when you format a hard drive, guys, it's like me erasing that treasure map of yours on that whiteboard. I know, I'm thumb sucking here, but that's exactly what it is. Nothing is actually gone. So that is why we go and use a sanitization program. It overwrites it in such a manner so that if somebody does try and recover it, then, yeah, it's not going to be possible. If we look at answer D, deguzzing, that does make the data non-recoverable, but you're not going to be able to use the hard drive after that. Deguzzing is using magnets of sorts, guys. You sometimes get these industrial machines that you will go and put this hard drive into. Very, very strong magnets that will go and use. And it corrupts all the data on that hard drive, but it does it in such a manner where the hard drive is not reusable again after that. It's kaput. You don't want to go and use that hard drive. So that's deguzzing. Yes, it will take care of the sensitive data, but it's not repeatable, and the hard drive will not be able to be reused. So it does not tick those boxes. So it ticks the box of removing the sensitive data, but that's the only box it ticks. In a sense of making this repeatable, In a sense of making the hard drive reusable, does not tick those boxes. So the only viable option here, folks, is B. Question 44. You've been called in to assist with a security incident. Alright, so that means something has happened. Your findings indicate that a malicious update was distributed to a common software platform and disabled services at many organizations. Alright, so there was a third party involved. It seems like the third party got compromised, this software platform, and that obviously led to, well, an incident taking place, probably with us as well. Which of the following best describes this type of vulnerability? Yeah, guys, so at the end of the day, you can have the best security in your own platform, but if you're getting your software from a third party and they don't have proper security in place there, then, yeah, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. So which of the following best describes this type of vulnerability? Is it a phishing attack? No, guys, phishing is when you or one of your users receives something like an email, for example, and they try and trick you or the user into giving sensitive information. Nowhere here in this question of mine did I mention that we are trying to get sensitive information out of you. So it's not phishing. Is it B, a distributed denial of service attack? No, we're not talking about bringing down a server or a website, by overloading it with traffic, anything like that. Nowhere did we mention anything like that. Is it a rogue employee? We did not talk about employees here. We did not talk about someone having access and then doing stuff like downloading stuff, deleting stuff, changing stuff they were not supposed to. Although that would classify as an incident, but nowhere here did we talk about permissions or user accounts or people doing stuff they're not supposed to. So it's not a rogue employee. So by process of elimination, you probably already know the answer is D. And yes, that is the answer. Supply chain. It's a third-party platform where you or your users are getting your software from. So it's a supply chain of sorts. Now, whether it be a software platform, anything else, if they get compromised, it's part of your supply chain that has now been compromised. And unfortunately, this is a tricky one, guys. It is. Because in your own company, you can go and enforce all kinds of security. Security that looks like it's straight from freaking NASA. But if it's your third party, it's a tricky one. So you will have to go and inspect that software, evaluate it in some sort of way. Now that brings me to question 45, which is kind of sort of follow-up to 44. So with 45, you have been called in by the company BurningIceTech as a third party to do a full spectrum analysis of its supply chain. You see what I mean by a bit of a follow-up? I did it like this on purpose. Which of the following would you use to meet this requirement? So now we know, based on the previous question, we had a bit of an issue with our third party in a previous question. Now in this new question, I didn't say there's an issue, but let's assume there is an issue. You are now called in. You are my third party. I'm hiring you guys as my third party. I want you to do a full spectrum analysis of my supply chain. What are you going to do to help me out, guys? Are you going to be using a vulnerability scanner? I mean, it's not a bad tool to go and use, but is it applicable to this scenario here? No, guys. Vulnerability scanners, they scan systems for known technical vulnerabilities. Not exactly what we're looking for here. They focus on assets you control, assets that you own. You are coming as an outsider, so these assets and stuff that you're going to be scanning, these softwares, is not stuff that you own or control now, is it? These vulnerability scanners, guys, they do not analyze vendors or suppliers. So remember, there's a vendor or a supplier that we're scanning here. They do not map supply chain relationships, and they do not assess organizational or geopolitical risk. They don't do that. If we look at answer B, illumination tool. Now that sounds made up, doesn't it? Believe it or not, it's not made up. And believe it or not, that is the answer here, folks. So if you want to go and do a full spectrum analysis of the supply chain, then yes, this is the tool. It allows you to assess first, second, and third-party vendors. Man, how freaking cool is that? It allows you to go and assess external dependencies. It allows you to assess relationships, exposure, and risk across the entire ecosystem. And it allows you to assess threat intelligence, geopolitical risk, breaches, and even trust relationships. Wowza. Now guys, this tool is specifically designed to map and visualize the supply chain relationships. It's designed to do that. It's designed to identify hidden and indirect dependencies. It is designed to assess third-party and fourth-party risk. And it's designed to provide broad situational awareness, not just technical flaws. So the answer is definitely B here, but let's have a look at C and D as well. So if you look at C, a penetration test. Guys, that's something that the red team would normally go and do, if you remember what the red team is. Very offensive. It's definitely not the answer. So the penetration test, as we well know by now, they simulate an attack against specific systems. It's very narrow. It's a point in time. It's a technical assessment of sorts, and it focuses on exploitation, not visibility. It does not provide ecosystem-wide analysis. It does not assess suppliers or downstream dependencies, and it does not deliver full spectrum insight. So it does not do that. If we look at the last answer there, guys, SCAPE. I'm probably butchering the name. I mean, I know the abbreviation stands for Security Content Automation Protocol. I mean, that's a mouthful, but I know that's what it stands for, but I can never seem to pronounce this. I'm not sure if it's SCAPE or SCAP or I don't know. The point here is, guys, that's not the answer. It's more for vulnerability naming, configuration compliance, security automation. So it's useful for compliance and automation, but it does not analyze supply chains. It does not provide third-party risk intelligence, and it does not give holistic organizational visibility. So, yeah, fresh out of luck there. Not the answer. Question 46. You have been instructed by your IT manager to do a risk assessment, but to do it without using any company proprietary information. So that's a tricky one. Which of the following can you use to achieve this? Now, guys, basically what the question here says, what I want you guys to do is to do an assessment, but to do it using publicly accessible information. You're not allowed to do this assessment using information that you would normally have inside the company. You've got to do this assessment as if you are someone from the outside. What exposure, what risk does my company have with the information of my company that's out there publicly available? That's basically kind of sort of what I'm asking you in a nutshell. So, which of the following can you use to achieve this? Is it configuration auditing? No, that would mean you would have access to my configurations inside my company. That is private information. Defeats the purpose, would you not say? So it's not that. Network scanning. If you're going to go and scan my network, then you would have access to my private network information. So, no. Open source intelligence. Yes, that is publicly accessible information, guys. That's the answer. And then D, penetration testing. So that would mean you're going to have to go and directly attack my company or simulate an attack. And then once again, you're going to see or you're going to have information about my company that the public would normally not have. So the only viable answer here, if you go look at publicly accessible information, is the open source intelligence, folks. At least that was a short and quick one. Let's move on to another one. Question 47. You have been instructed by BurningIceTech to conduct a vulnerability assessment of its environment. So yes, guys, I need your help again. which of the following is a risk of conducting this assessment? Yes, believe it or not, there's actually risks sometimes on conducting assessments like this. What kind of risks do you guys think would I face by conducting an assessment like this? Is it A, reporting false positives? No, guys, I'd rather have a false positive, being too paranoid, than having nothing reported. I mean, having nothing reported risks me having security vulnerabilities that I don't know about. But if you accidentally now and then going to go and report something and it turns out to be a false positive, you know what? So be it. At least we could have potentially detected something if there was something where now if I just leave it, then I risk having vulnerabilities in my environment that I might not know about. So I'm willing to accept false positives. At least I know you're doing your job. Is it answer B, a disruption of business operations? Yes, guys, depending on how you go about it, sometimes this can disturb your business. So there may or may not be downtime here. It may or may not disturb your business here or there. So B is so far the answer here. Well, I can probably go ahead and tell you guys that is the answer here since I made this. Looking at answer C, unauthorized access to the system. Not necessarily. Remember, I'm hiring you to do this. So if I'm hiring you to do this, that means you're authorized? Question mark. So yes, you are authorized because I've hired you to do this. And obviously, you're not going to go and give other people access that's not supposed to have access. So, no, not really C. D, finding security gaps in the system. That's kind of the point, is it not? So, one of the points of doing a vulnerability assessment is to find weaknesses, threats, gaps in my security system. So, should you find one, that's kind of the point. I want you to find them so that we can address these, so that I can go and close them or do something about it. So if you don't find them, then somebody else is going to find them sooner or later. So I want you to find these gaps in the security system. That's a good thing. So the answer is and remains B here, folks. Question 48. You have been tasked by your management team to use techniques to identify potential malicious insiders. They're not necessarily, but potential. Which of the following techniques would draw the attention of a malicious attacker in an insider threat scenario? So basically, I want to draw the attention of an attacker that might reside inside my company, that might be working for me is basically what I'm saying. So if I have somebody working for me, let's say a disgruntled employee as an example, I may or may not have some disgruntled employees. Maybe they've been planted in my company as a spy for all I know. And I want to be able to catch these people that are potential spies or that are disgruntled or just rogue. I want to be able to catch these people. Now, how can I go about catching these malicious attackers? How can I go about doing that? Is it A, creating a false text file in a place called docs and then salaries? That is very plausible, guys. Do you know what we call that? We call that a honeypot. It's a fake file. So sometimes we use this to see if there's any attackers in our company environment. In this case, physically inside my company environment. So that should be pretty juicy. Somebody working for me will obviously be very curious to see people's salaries, don't you think? A lot of people couldn't resist clicking on something like that. Now, it's a fake file. And as soon as they click on that file, ding, 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 I'm going to know somebody is trying to see that information. And it's going to draw attention to that person. So it's a trap, in other words. So far, that's the answer. Well, that actually is the answer here, folks. Looking at answer B, setting weak passwords. Why would you want to go and set weak passwords? That's just asking for trouble. We want to see if somebody is in my environment, kind of get them to click on something to trigger it so I can know that they're there and to see what kind of stuff they might be after. But setting weak passwords, that's just asking for trouble. Answer C, scheduling vulnerable jobs. Also putting your company at risk, so I wouldn't do that. You don't want to get attacked. You want to simulate an attack. I want to not really expose anything in my company if I don't have to. So if I'm going to go and set weak passwords, I'm putting myself at risk, my real company, my real environment at risk. If I'm going to go and schedule vulnerable jobs, I'm really putting my real jobs at risk here. But if I'm going to go and create a false file, a honeypot, there's no risk to that. It's not a real file. It's a honeypot, hence the name. So if they click on that, and even if they do manage to see it, there's no risk yet. It's fake. It's all fake, guys. So there's no exposure to my company. Looking at answer D, adding a fake account. You can do that, I suppose, but it depends on whether you can go and monitor that. So if you can monitor that, then I suppose you might see, okay, you know what, they are trying to hack my accounts and stuff like that. But generally, we want to see more what these people are after. And adding a fake account, I think that's more going to draw the attention of an outside attacker, guys. If you look at my question, the question says, I want to identify people inside the company. It's an insider threat scenario. Inside people already have accounts, guys. They generally already have some level of privilege. So they're not going to really be too concerned about going after accounts since they have one, They're going to be more concerned about seeing certain things like salaries. An outside threat scenario, yes, they might be after an account. But an insider, not so much. They have accounts, guys. So the answer is and remains A. Question 49. You need to protect data at rest. That means the data is not moving. It's just staying fixed in one location. Which of the following cryptographic solutions will achieve this, guys? Is it A, private key? Now, although private key is normally associated with, encryption, that normally goes with a public key, and that's normally for data that's going to be moving around. It's not going to be staying in one location. It's exchanging, hands and all that kind of stuff. So, no, not the ideal one for this situation, considering that the data is going to be moving. We specifically need to protect data at rest. Looking at answer B, full disk encryption. Yes, folks, that's the answer. So from a Microsoft perspective, that'll probably be something like BitLocker as an example. From an Apple perspective, this might be something like Vault or File Vault, whatever the Apple guys call this. This is generally used for data that stays in one location. So that is the answer. If you look at answer C, steganography, I cannot even pronounce that word, but it basically involves hiding something. Yeah, it'll protect data to a certain extent, for the data at rest. So yeah, it can be used for data at rest, but it's not so much used to protect data than to hide it, if I have to put it like that. So you'll be hiding things in things like videos or images, things like that. So it's not ideal for protecting data, especially not large forms of data. It's more for hiding small bits of data, I would say. So not ideal. D, definitely not. That is a way of protecting your data, or at least ensuring its integrity and its authenticity. But that's generally for data also that's been moving around. Can be used for data in one location, but it's more for data moving around. And I would say it's more for ensuring something is original, making sure its integrity is intact, making sure it's authentic, but it's not protect the data. So if you want to keep something confidential, for example, then a digital signature might not achieve that. People might still be able to see the contents, but they won't be able to change the contents. Where if you look at full disk encryption, they cannot even see the contents, never mind changing the contents. So it'll also give you confidentiality, the full disk encryption, never mind integrity. Question 50. Only 10 more to go, guys. You have a big client who has a data center that is located in an area that is very prone to power outages. Which of the following would allow your client's data center to remain operational during a multi-day power outage? So in other words, the power will probably be out for multiple days. It's not just one day. It could be 2 days, it could be 5 days, it could be 10 days. Which one of the following would allow them to remain operational, even though it might be, let's say, 10 days as an example? Is it answer A, a UPS, uninterruptible power supply? Now, granted, guys, data centers do have UPSs, massive ones, but these only last for a short period of time. So these will last maximum maybe a day, 2 days. You get massive ones. I've installed these myself, and you sometimes need like 3 or 4 people to carry one of these, if you can even carry them. They're massive. But they do run out. They last for about a day, 2 days, maybe 3 days. They don't last very long. So folks, we don't know how long this multi-day power outage is. What if it's 10 or 20 days? That UPS will eventually run out. Is it B, a battery backup? Now, I don't see these often, but I have come to some sites where they've got absolutely massive battery backups. They do last for multiple days, I've got to say. So the ones I've seen last for multiple days. But they do eventually also run out. Batteries don't last forever, guys. A UPS as well is essentially a battery. It's a battery of clean energy and you get normal batteries, but it's still a battery. They do eventually run out. Unless you've got something that's actively charging that battery, it's not going to work. If we look at answer C, a generator, although not the cleanest energy, it will not run out. You just need to keep throwing in diesel or petrol or some sort of fuel, but it's not going to run out, guys. As long as you've got fuel, it's not going to run out. It can keep running for days and days and days and days. Might get hot at some point, but it's not going to run out. Answer D, replication. No, replication is more for like a digital failure. It's not going to help with a power failure. So C is going to be your best bet here, guys. Realistically, in the real environment, though, it's not just going to be a generator. The generator will probably go and provide power to other devices, which is going to go and clean up the energy. One of the devices you're going to find between a generator and the servers is going to be the UPSs. So somewhere along the line, the UPSs will get charged again via the generator. That's generally how we do it in real life, but that's obviously not the scenario we're facing here. We want a distinct answer here, which one is better, and which one will be able to keep this data center up and running for a long period of time. That will be the generator. Moving you guys along to question 51 here. BurningIceTech, that's me, is busy redesigning and updating its infrastructure. Yes, I am. You've been tasked to reduce the number of physical servers in use. Let's face it, guys, everything is becoming virtual and everything is moving into the cloud. So the sooner you get with the program, the better. So, hypothetically speaking, I'm busy trying to reduce my physical servers. Which of the following would allow you to achieve this? So how can you help me achieve my goal? Is it answer A, redundancy? No. Guys, redundancy is to make sure you've got, for example, 2 or more of something. As an example, a backup generator, a backup internet connection, a backup server, So in fact, you might actually have more servers in that scenario, not less. So it's not going to help me reduce my number of physical servers. Answer B, isolation. So that's more like a sandbox environment. So that's more for security purposes, if you will. It's not really going to reduce my physical servers. Answer C, virtualization. Yes, folks. Most companies have started doing this 10 years, 15 years, almost 20 years ago, where they might have had 10 servers and now they'll have like 1 physical server on site. And that 1 physical server is normally a pretty decently beefed up server. It's got a lot of RAM and a lot of space. Why? Because it's got a lot of virtual machines normally running on it. The majority, if not all of your servers, are all virtual. Some of them might be on-prem, or they might all be on-prem. Some of them or all of them might be in a cloud even nowadays. It's actually very popular for companies to move their virtual machines completely to the cloud nowadays. It might not even be on premises at all. You might be completely virtual. So you could actually get your servers to a point where you've got absolutely 0 physical servers on premises with virtualization, depending on how you go about it. So either way, you're definitely going to be reducing your physical servers. I can go and host all my virtual servers on 1 physical server on premises, or just a few. So that's already going to reduce it. Or I can take it a notch further and put my virtual machines in the cloud. Then I'm going to have 0 physical servers on premises. That is the answer, by the way. Looking at answer D, segmentation. That is generally something we'll go and do of something like your network, subdividing it into multiple smaller networks. So that's more from a security perspective, so that if someone happens to break into your network somehow, especially outsiders, then they won't necessarily have access to your full network. Instead, they'll be restricted to hopefully that small part of the network, and they'll have to hack their way further and further and further into the network. So you don't want to hand it to the hacker on a silver platter. You want to make their life as difficult as possible. So if we look at the question here, what I need you guys to do, the virtualization is going to be the best way to go and do it, guys. Question 52. One of the users at BurningIceTech, that's my company, one of my users reports clicking on a link in an email from a payment website that asked them to update their contact information. When finished entering the information, they received a page not found error message. Oh boy. So one of my users in my company is being an idiot, is basically what I'm saying. Ignore me. I didn't say that. So which of the following has happened, guys? Is it typo squatting? No. Typo squatting, for those of you that know or that remember, because I have mentioned that actually in this video before. Typo squatting is when the perpetrators, the threat actors, they go and make a website where the URL looks very flippin' similar to the original website. So let's say Google. Instead of having GOOGLE, it'll maybe have one O as an example instead of two O's. It is so similar that the average person might not even notice it. Unless you specifically go and look for it, you might not notice it. Or maybe it's Facebook, but there's maybe an extra K or something in the URL. People don't always pay attention to things like that. Even IT people, even I don't even always pay attention to things like that. Even I'm actually a little guilty of that. So that's typo squatting. Nowhere here does it mention that the URL looks similar, but it's not quite the same. It specifically mentions the person clicking on a link, typing in some details, and then after typing in details, it just says page not found. Is it cross-site scripting? No. Cross-site scripting, guys, is when a threat actor will go and look for a weakness in your website, maybe like a search bar, for example. If they find a weakness, maybe like your search bar, they will go and see if they can go and inject something into that website of yours. And now, what's going to happen is when people go to that website of yours, their browsers and they themselves trust you, they trust your website, their PC, their browser downloads the website, and now in that website code is this malicious code that was injected and stuff. And well, from there you can see what's going to happen. It's not going to end well. Is it brand impersonation? Kind of, maybe, but nowhere do I outright say in this question of mine that it looks exactly like this site or that site. I just said they typed in information and after that it said page not found. I did not say it looks exactly like this page or it looks like Facebook or it looks like that. I did not say that. So brand impersonation would kind of sort of be spoofing. So nowhere here did I say it looks like a certain site. I just said they clicked on a link, typed in info, and then it says page not found. So guys, that is phishing. Phishing tricks the users into giving information in some sort of way. So in this instance, my users clicked on a link. They got taken to a website of sorts, which asked them for certain information. This could even be normal information like the name, the last name, phone number, blah, blah, blah. We don't know what it asked for. Besides the point in this scenario. And after they click on submit or finish or whatever, it just says page not found. It's because that page's purpose was just to capture the information, to steal the information. And once I've got your information, if I'm that threat actor, I don't care if you see no page. Yes, you might know something is up, but it's too late for you now because I've got your information. That's why they don't even bother displaying a page after that, because they've got your information. They don't care if you know it was a phishing attack after that, because they've got it. Question 53. You've been tasked with providing the most effective way to protect an application server that is running software which is no longer supported from network threats. Oh goody. So you've got an application server and this server is just no longer supported, so you want it, you need it, but it's no longer supported. So how do you protect that? Now there's many ways you can actually go about this problem, guys, but which one is the best out of the options we've got down below? So which of the following would you use? Port security. Port security, guys, is more of a network security. This is something you'll probably go and do on a switch, a managed switch. It's going to go and check the flow of traffic, and if you go and plug something into that port that does not belong, yeah, it's going to shut down the port or it's going to issue an alert. So if I go and plug out a network cable or a network switch, and I plug the same cable, the same device in, nothing happens. But if you plug that cable out of that switch and you plug something else into that port, it's going to see via the MAC address that, oh, hang on a moment, this is something different. Now, to a certain extent, this could work via a long way, because it's all connected. Your application server is most likely on the network, so by enforcing port security in that same network, yeah, you're adding to the security, but not by much. If we go look at answer B, air gap. I'm not sure if you guys know what air gap is. It's not something I hear people say often. Air gap is when you basically go and take that server or whatever it is completely off the network. It is not on the network at all. Now, it's kind of difficult to hack something that's not on the network at all, wouldn't you say? That's basically what this is all about. So that application server, which is no longer supported, so in other words, it's not going to get any updates or any patches, it's probably an old legacy server. Why not take it completely off the network? then you don't have to worry about getting the latest updates and patches and stuff, because hackers or threat actors are not gonna be able to hack it since it's not on the network. Yes, it's gonna cause a couple of other inconveniences now, but security-wise, that is the most secure option on this list, guys. That is the answer. Latest updates, that's completely irrelevant because it specifically says in my question it is no longer supported. That means no updates, no patches. So getting at the latest updates is not going to make a difference. If you go check what the latest updates is, it's not going to be a recent one. It will probably be whatever the last one is that it had on there. So C is completely ruled out. If you look at answer D, security awareness training. Now, just like port security, that will help. It definitely will help. You should definitely go and do that. Just like port security, you should go and do that. But it's not going to solve the bigger problem here. It's still going to take just one user of yours to go and do something silly. And before you know it, your server is going to be compromised. So yes, A and D is something that will help. It is something you should do. But the most secure option here is going to be B. And C is just, well, no longer relevant. Question 54. The company BurningIceTech, I like saying that, has a couple of legacy devices, in other words, old devices, that are no longer receiving updates or patches. No surprise there because it's old. These devices are being decommissioned. Why? Because they are old. They're not supported, they're not receiving any updates or patches anymore because they're that old. So, when we start decommissioning devices due to their age, and due to them no longer being supported or receiving any updates or patches and stuff, what do we call that? Do we call that end of support, end of life, end of business, or end of testing? So what is the terminology for that? That's basically what we want to know. Here, guys, I have to go straight to the answer. It is B, end of life. So whenever you have, let's say, a software, for example, maybe it is no longer supported by the developer or whoever made this software. You're not getting any updates anymore. If there's any issues or bugs or glitches, they don't really care about you anymore. That is its end of life. If you look at operating systems that just don't get support anymore by their manufacturers or creators, Microsoft will be a good example of that. If you look at Windows 10, it has reached its end of life on the 13th of October 2025. So it's no longer supported. Yeah, you can go and get it extended for, another 12 months, depending on what you go and do. But officially, it's actually no longer supported, technically. So you might think the answer is end of support because it's no longer supported, but it's called end of life, guys. The same can be said about hardware, which is actually what this question is about. This question is not about software or operating systems, which is what my two examples was. It's about hardware, devices, but we call it the same thing, end of life. Question 55, folks. Almost at the end of this video. You've been made aware of a user working at one of your client's sites that is receiving a phone call from someone claiming to work for the company. So claiming to work from the same company, in other words. The person calling is requesting sensitive information like credit card information. The user receiving the phone call sees the caller ID shows the same as the company's main phone number. Interesting. So it does look like the person's either coming from the same company, like legit, or at the very least, they're spoofing the company's main number. Which of the following attacks is the user most likely experiencing? Is it phishing? Now, phishing on its own, guys, is a bit of a broad term, but if we look at phishing as a whole, it generally refers to as receiving an email. It's not limited to email. It's more of an umbrella term. But if we had to pick one, we would normally say it's an email being received by the victim. And in this email, the threat actor is trying to trick the user into disclosing sensitive information. So phishing on its own is usually an email, but yet it is technically an umbrella term. If we look at B, smishing, that is when the victim receives something like an SMS asking the victim for sensitive information. So that's also asking for sensitive information. And in this question that I gave you guys, yes, the victim is being asked for sensitive information, but is it via an email? No, so it's not A. Is it via an SMS? No, so it's not B. C is vishing. The V stands for voice. That is when your victim receives a phone call from a threat actor and they're trying to trick the victim into disclosing sensitive information via a phone. Does that sound like what's happening here, folks? Yes, the victim here is receiving a phone call. So the V is a phone call. If you look at something like quishing, which is not a name here, by the way, in this list, quishing is when you try and trick the victim via a QR code. I'm mentioning that because that is something new. And then we've got whaling there. Whaling is just when you try and go after someone high in a company, someone with a high rank perhaps, or someone with a lot of privilege perhaps. It's not someone specific. I would say it's more of a category. I'm looking more at people that are high individuals in a company, or that's got a lot of high rank or a lot of high privilege. That's whaling. Question 56. The company BurningIceTech has just hired you as a consultant to perform an offensive security assessment covering penetration testing and social engineering. Which of the following teams are you a part of, considering what you've been hired to do? Alright, so this is basically all about testing you again to see if you understand the differences between the different kinds of teams you get in cybersecurity. As I've mentioned twice in this video before, guys, because there has been 2 other questions similar to this in the video where I've covered the different colors of teams you get. I'm basically trying to check and see if you really understand this, because this is very important for the exam. You would remember there's quite a few teams, not just the 4 I've listed here down below. So what I'm requiring you to do, if you look at my question, I'm requiring you to be offensive, not defensive, not a mix, not to do management, compliance, or any of that other weird stuff, developing. No. I want you to specifically be offensive. I want you to do penetration testing. I want you to hack my company and test my security. What team are you a part of? You are then part of the red team. I'm going to get straight to it because we've covered this quite a few times. So if you are offensive, you are testing my security using things like penetration testing or what have you, you are part of the offensive team. The blue team is the defensive team, the opposite. The purple team is a mix between red and blue. Integrates defensive and offensive is what that is. The white team, guys, is management, compliance, analysts, logistics, things like that. And as a reminder, once again, you do get a couple of other colors as well, guys, like the green team, which enhances security automation with code and design, like the yellow team, which is software coders and architects, and lastly, the orange team, which facilitates interaction and education. Anyway, the answer here is A, the red team. Let's move you guys along to question 57. Almost at the end, guys. Just hang in there. One of your fellow security colleagues in the company BurningIceTech has set up a perimeter firewall, but you and your team continue to notice suspicious connections between internal endpoints. Alright, so one of your colleagues, he or she or they've now gone and set up a perimeter firewall, but at the same time, you and your team, now you keep noticing suspicious connections between internal endpoints. Endpoints, guys, being things like laptops, desktops, things like that. So this is inside your company's network, not outside, inside. I'm emphasizing on that because it's going to be important for this question. So which of the following should your team set up to mitigate the threat posed by this suspicious activity? Is it access control lists? Now, access control lists on its own is not a bad thing to go and do in your company, guys, but it controls the flow of traffic. So it's going to go and check where is traffic coming from and where does it want to go to. It's going to go and check the source IP and the destination IP. Depending on where it's coming from or where it's going to, you can then either go and block or allow it. Now, this is not really going to help for this specific scenario. So in general, yes, you should go and implement access control lists if you think it's possible to go and implement that in your company. But for this specific situation, any PC could be suspicious at this point in time. And if that PC happens to be one of the allowed IP addresses, then your access control list is not going to help one bit, guys. So it's not A. Looking at answer B, web application firewall. Now that is an additional firewall, guys, but this firewall is once again on the edge of your network. It's going to control traffic coming into your network from outside your network. So if your own staff or any other outsiders like contractors or consultants wants to gain access to applications inside your network from outside your network, then yes, an application firewall would work for that. But it's not going to work for this specific situation. The suspicious connections is between your internal endpoints. It's not coming in from outside. So your web application firewall is not going to help you one bit in this instance. Is it answer C? Host-based firewall. So that is a firewall on each of these devices. It gets installed or it gets turned on the actual endpoints. Yes, folks, that is the answer. So if any one of these endpoints gets a suspicious connection coming into it, its own internal firewall, which is now running on it, something like Windows Firewall or some third-party software, it will detect that connection and it will block that connection. Unless they went and specifically allowed it through the firewall, it's not going to come through the firewall. So that is the answer here. Looking at answer D, application allow list. This has got nothing to do with applications, guys. So completely unrelated. Question 58. You have been tasked by BurningIceTech to increase the overall security of network devices and to harden them. Which of the following would best accomplish this task? Alright, so we need to go and increase security for network devices and we need to go and harden them. So it's specifically network devices. So with that now being in mind, can we go and use security awareness training? It's going to make people more aware of what's going on the network, but it's not going to go and improve the security of the actual devices themselves. Remember, folks, we need to go and increase the actual physical security on these devices and to go and harden them. Security awareness, yes, that is something we need to do in a company, and yes, that'll help with network security, but it's not going to improve the actual security on the devices. It's not going to harden these devices. Looking at answer B, configuring centralized logging. So that's simply just a matter of, okay, where are we keeping the logs for our devices? Is it going to be central? Is it going to be local? Where are we keeping the logs? But it's not going to improve the security. We need to harden them. We don't care at this moment about monitoring, analytics, logs, checking stuff afterwards. No, we want to actually improve the actual security. Logs does not improve security. It just makes you more aware of what's going on after the fact, but it does not actually go and increase the security. Answer C, replacing Telnet with SSH. Now that is something that is more secure, and that is something you can go and do on a network device. So far, that is the answer here, folks. Looking at answer D, using templates for making security changes. No, guys. Some people might want to go and use those, especially if you're still new to that specific device or you don't really know what you're doing yet. But it's extremely dangerous, especially depending on where you're getting them from. If you're going to go and use some sort of template that you downloaded from online, who's to say somebody did not go and alter that template in some sort of way, kind of like a Trojan horse. They purposely went and sabotaged it in some sort of way or changed something in that template in some sort of way that if you're going to go and use that as a template, it's going to compromise your device or your network, and they can go and take advantage of that. So they're basically tricking you into using the template. Even if you go and use your own templates that was made by your own internal staff, dangerous. You never know. Somebody might have gotten a hold of those. Somebody might have hacked into those. Maybe your service got hacked. Somebody went and changed the template, and they're just waiting for one day for somebody to go and use one of these templates. Very dangerous. So the answer is and remains C, guys. Telnet, for those of you that don't know, is a way or a means for us to go and remote connect to our network devices, like routers, firewalls, things like that. However, Telnet is in clear text. Uses port 23. Not that we care about the port number right now, but it's in clear text. So if there's somebody in the middle that intercepts this communication, they can potentially capture our username and passwords, or they can even hijack the session. Both is not good. SSH is essentially the exact same thing, except it is encrypted. Just about nobody uses Telnet these days anymore, guys. We still talk about it in courses and stuff, but almost nobody and almost nothing uses Telnet anymore. It is very unsecure. Almost everyone and everything uses SSH, which uses port 22. So that is the answer, folks. Question 59. The local admin account for the company's router was unexpectedly used to log into the company's firewall. Which of the following would most likely have prevented this from happening? So that is an unexpected one. Somebody went and used the local admin account of the router to log into the firewall. I mean, what? So if you go look at it closely, guys, the factory usernames, the factory admin accounts for most network devices is usually the word admin. Maybe not for all of them, but for most of them. So if you go check it, you can go check me on this. The username is usually literally the word admin. The password on most of these devices, the default one, is either blank, or it's also the word admin, which is probably the most common one, or in some cases it's the word admin followed by a 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, you get other variations of it, but those are the most common ones I've seen. So the fact that somebody was able to use the router's username and password on the firewall, and the fact that they were able to log in, means either someone was stupid enough to go and configure the exact same username on the router and the firewall, and I can't imagine that being the case. Normally, if somebody is clever enough to know they need to go and change the username and password, they're probably clever enough or smart enough to know they should not use the same username and password for everything. So I doubt that was the case. What I think is the situation here is somebody did not change the default factory username and password on the router, and the same can be said about the firewall, which is why they were able to log in using the exact same account, because it has not been changed. They're all still on the default account here, guys. So you probably see the answer down below now, don't you? It's not answer A. Checking the logs more often, that'll make you more aware of incidents that has happened after the fact, but it doesn't stop anything from actually happening. Using least privilege, that is a good thing to go and implement, but it's not going to solve this problem. So least privilege is a golden rule in IT in general, guys. Everyone and everything, including yourself, should never use more privilege than what you need to achieve a task or a goal, because you never know. Someone or something, including yourself, might get compromised. So if your account gets compromised, we want to limit what that hacker or that threat actor can do and what they can see. So least privilege will achieve that, but it's got nothing to do with this particular scenario. Answer C, which you probably know is the answer now, changing the default passwords on devices. Yes, the default passwords has not been changed. So you should go and change those default passwords. If you want, you can even go and change the default usernames. But the more important one here is to change the default passwords. Change it to anything else. And installing updates, guys, is not going to solve this problem. Yes, it'll make those network devices more secure, in other aspects and other ways. But it's not going to change the passwords. You, as a human being, as the administrator, need to go and change those passwords. Anyway, so the answer is C here, folks. Let's move you guys on to question 60. The last question in this video. Wowza. What a mouthful. You won't believe how tired I am from making this video. And you won't believe how dry my mouth is. It feels like a cotton ball. Just a reminder, guys, if you're looking for more practical-based questions, that is on my Patreon. Link is in the video description down below. There is going to be more practice questions for Security Plus. I will be uploading other versions. So if you pay attention, you'll see this video says version 1. I did the same thing for A+. I did the same thing for N+. There were multiple videos. So I'll make multiple videos for Security Plus. This is only version 1. There's going to be a version 2 and maybe even a version 3. So we'll see how it goes. So if you guys like this, then I'll make another one. So let me know in the comment section down below if you like this and if you want me to make more like this one. So yes, practical questions on Patreon, and then in the comments down below, let me know if you want a version 2 of this video, guys. So on to the last question, question 60. You have been tasked to gather data and to ensure it is secure using an algorithm that could verify the data has not been modified. Which of the following will allow you to achieve this? So guys, you need to go and gather data now, for me or whoever. You need to secure it. And you need to do this using an algorithm that could verify that nobody has tampered with this data. We especially do this when we go and gather evidence and things like that. Looking at the ones down below, guys, which one would allow us to achieve this? Is it A, encryption? No, guys. Encryption is going to make things more secure, but it doesn't allow you to verify integrity. So encryption is used to keep data secret and secure, does not verify integrity. So yeah, guys, so while encryption does protect our data from unauthorized access, it does not tell you if the data has been modified. You will never know. Looking at answer B, code check. Guys, that is not something we do with encryption. It's got nothing to do with encryption. That is more a terminology we use in software, for example. To go and check if there's an error, things like that. So it can very easily be confused with cybersecurity, but it's not really a terminology we use in cybersecurity. It's more for error detection in software, if I have to put it in simple terms. Looking at answer C, guys, checksum. Now, a checksum generates a simple numerical value from the data to detect errors. It does do that. It can detect accidental errors, for example, like a bit flip, but it's not cryptographically secure, though. That is something you need to realize. So it can do a couple of things. It does tick the box partially, but it's not cryptographically secure. An attacker, guys, could still modify the data, and they can go and recompute the checksum very easily. Please be aware of that. So now you know what the answer is due to process of elimination, don't you? It's hash. A hash function, guys, takes the input data and produces a unique fixed size output. They're going to be unique, guys. So in other words, cryptographic hash functions like SHA-256, SHA, I don't know how you pronounce that. These are designed, guys, so that any small change in the data results in a completely different hash. You can do the smallest of changes, and you will end up with a completely different hash. So you can store or transmit the hash alongside the data, guys. Later then, recomputing the hash verifies whether the data has been altered or not. How interesting is that? So that is your answer, folks. And that is the last question for today's video, version 1 of Security Plus. Alright, folks, so a reminder, if you want practical based questions, that is on my Patreon. The link is on the screen, but if you want a clickable link, that's in the video description down below, so go and check it out there. There will be a version 2 of the practice questions, so let me know in the comment section down below if you enjoyed it, so I can decide how quickly I want to go and make that or not. And then, guys, if you have not done it already, please, guys, give this video a like. I mean, it's like 4 hours freaking long, guys. You know how long it takes me to go and edit this and all of that. It's a lot of work, guys. So give the video a like. If you'd like to know when version 2 of this comes out or any of my other content, consider subscribing. Then you'll know. YouTube will inform you then. And then, of course, guys, for every one of you guys supporting the content I create, thank you very much, guys. I do appreciate it. Here's a list of the Patreons. If you want to be on this list, guys, you need to be a paid Patreon. And not just a paid Patreon, you need to let me know that you want your name to be displayed. So once you become a paid Patreon, send me a DM on Patreon and let me know what name you want to have displayed. And I'll gladly add it for you on this list. If you want to support me in some sort of other way, you can find that information in the video description down below. You can make a PayPal donation. You can buy me a coffee. Or, if it's available in your country, you can just click on the thanks button that's below the video. In some countries, there's like a thanks button. If you click on that, you can make a donation as well. Or just become a Patreon, guys. I mean, I think the lowest tier on Patreon is like $3. So if you want to support me, you can do that. Support the content I create and I can make more. Now, before we conclude this video, guys, I'm sure you all know, the channel does have a Discord server. So if you want to go and check that out, if you want to be in some sort of study group, or if you want to ask questions about this course or any other CompTIA course, you're welcome to join it there. Ask your questions, or maybe you can answer somebody else's questions. I'm also in there. There's other trainers in there. So feel free to go make use of that resource, guys. And then, guys, the channel does have a Reddit. It's fairly new, but it seems to be growing now. So it's very, very new. If you want to go and check it out, if you want to go and join it, it's called CompTIA_Plus. Go check it out on Reddit. Maybe join it. Do a couple of posts. So if you're studying, if you want resources, or if you've written the exam, let us know. Make a post there. Alright, folks, that is effectively me, and I shall see you on the next video. Good luck with your exam, guys.